September 10th meeting. Moved by Councillor Morocco, seconded by Councillor Maves. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved unanimously. Next up is disclosures of pecuniary interest. Do we have any disclosures for tonight's meeting? Yes, Councillor Morocco?
Yes, I have 4 checks to declare. Check number 365588, check number 366363 made out to my spouse, and check 366364 and check 366732 made out to myself for attending AMO and travel expenses.
Okay, thank you. We get all those ones clear? Okay. Any other disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, and I too have 4 checks. Checks number 365460, 365864, 366316, and 366686. All checks made out to myself. Okay, moving on to the report part of our agenda. We're going to move forward the item 3, the Lions Legacy Trail, Millennium Trail, since we do have a number of people here in attendance in this regard. NW 2013-46. Everyone wants to turn to that report. Okay, and we would ask our Director of Municipal Works, Mr. Holman, if you would please present this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you may recall, a couple of years ago we were approached by the Niagara Falls Lions Club and asked us to advance the completion of the Millennium Trail, the 3rd phase in particular. We've been working with the Niagara Falls Lions for a year or so, trying to secure appropriate easements, obtain the engineering designs, and secure some in-kind contributions from OPG and Strawbag as they completed the Niagara Tunnel project. But we're at the stage now that we need to commence construction and engage a contractor to complete the work. We have a window of opportunity in that the region has currently got a contract awarded to Norjon Contracting to reconstruct that section of Stanley Avenue between Whirlpool Road and Thorold Stone Road. And they've given us some fairly competitive pricing to complete that work. And there are some gentlemen from the Niagara Falls Lions Club who would like us to take advantage of that opportunity. And in order to do that, we'll need to amend the budget and include this project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holman. I've got Councillor Thompson and Carrier.
We're going to hear from the delegation. I can simply make a motion. We were all here some months ago when Jim Fife, who was an employee here when I was at City Hall, very likable, very dynamic young man, and he made the presentation at that particular time. And I'm sad to say, and was really shocked to see that Jim has passed on. And in his honor, I'd be happy to make the motion that we adopt the resolution with respect to moving ahead with this trail. And I would hope that maybe there's some way within this development that we can utilize Jim Fife's name, who was so passionate about trying to make this happen. So I would move the motion.
Okay, moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Iannone. Councillor Carrier.
Thank you, Worship. Could we just get the Director of Engineer to talk a little bit more about the existing contractor that's there and how it's going to save us some money? Or are we talking about calling another tender on this or extending his contract? Could you explain that just a little better, Jeff?
Yes, the opportunity for us to save money is basically the mobilization, demobilization costs that would otherwise we would have to incur moving ahead. We've taken the unit prices from the contract that has been awarded and basically extended them. If we call the tender next year, I suppose there's a risk that it could be more expensive. Although, you know, it really is a function of how busy the construction community is at that time of year. We were hoping that we could at least complete the trail portion of the road this year, and then in the spring of the year complete some of the landscaping, the benches, the other features that go with this trail, including a portion of the cutter head from Big Becky, paving of the parking lot, and some trees. The Niagara Falls Lions still want to participate in the project, and we're trying to find an opportunity for them to help. They can help with those things like benches and particularly fundraising, things that the municipality is not in a position to do. So that's why you'll see in the recommendation, Councillor, that we're going to continue our efforts to secure some external sources of funding, and we're going to try and break down those components. But in order to have the certainty that the project can go ahead, we need to have the budget approved.
My concern is about the tendering process, and that we're not tendering this particular job, and that when we called the tender for the job that contractor is doing now, the other contractors didn't have a chance to bid based on doing this work as well. Is that right?
Mr. Mayor, there is a possibility that the cost could be cheaper if we retendered in 2014. I have no way to speculate. We were just looking to take advantage of the opportunity, and under the circumstances, we thought it was important to make the commitment that the trail proceed this year.
I don't have as much of a problem as making a commitment to the spending of the money for the trail as I do that it looked like we're not tendering the project, that we're extending a contract. Why would we not go to any of the other contractors who are in town and say, could you give us your unit prices to do this? It's just like that we're doing it then without a tender. That, I mean, I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
Jeff, what would the turnaround time be if we extended that to other, I mean, are we risking losing what's there now, or is there a quick turnaround time?
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, by the time we put it on the counter and advertised it, tendered it, and got it back to council, you know, at a regular council meeting, I think the soonest we could bring it back would be in November. You know, asphalt plants are closing mid-November, so we're really running the risk that we're not going to complete the work this year anyways.
I just don't want to be criticized for having it look like we're not tendering the job, that's all. That we're just extending another job, that we're not tendering this particular project. That was my only concern one of my concerns.
Councillor Pietrangelo.
Thank you, Worship. I don't think there's anything negative that anyone can actually say about the trail. I think when the concept of the trail was first introduced, the Millennium Trail was supposed to take people sort of around the busy part of Victoria Park where the falls is. So it was going to be from the Niagara Parkway and again through the city and then all the way to the Niagara Parkway again. Currently, as everyone I'm sure here knows, we don't have a connection to the Niagara Parkway. So this is going to be our first connection to the Niagara Parkway. So this is actually going to bring the city to the Parkway, which is great. I mean, from a safety standpoint, from an access standpoint, this section of the trail makes all the sense in the world. I have to say, though, I do agree with Councillor Carey in the sense that I was hoping that we at least had some information that would have shown us, that would have said, well, this is the contract price that these guys gave us, and this is the contract price that the other people gave us. It's a hard thing when, you know, to be criticized for sole sourcing, and I mean, in this case, it seems like we've only gone to one person and said, what's your unit price? And we're going to take that and go with it. It would have been better if it would have come down and it would have been tendered. Those are my comments.
Jeff, is there any feedback on the 587? Is that a price we came up with, or is that a price that the contractor came up with, or where does that number come from?
Those numbers come from the extension of the unit prices that were bid on the Stanley Avenue project. Okay, so there's items in those contracts for concrete and sidewalk and those types of things. So we just really extended them to to apply to the quantities that we have. So in a roundabout way, it has been tendered in that it has been a competitive process. But you know, the point's well taken. The reason why this report is here, quite frankly, is the urgency of the matter, and it was an opportunity. And if it is council's preference, you know, to hold off or go through a tender process, then we'll be looking at construction in 2014.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Pietrangelo, any other? Okay, Councilor Thompson?
Well, how many contractors were involved in the initial tender where you got your unit prices from? For Stanley Avenue?
It wasn't our tender, it was
The region?
it was the region's tender, so there were
Okay, so how many?
at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, so it's been through the tender process. You're using the same unit prices. They were the low tender in that case. So we have some comfort that this has been vetted through the tender process by the region. And that's what you're using?
Well, I think that the opportunity is there for us to use those numbers.
Okay.
Is
Yeah.
it the best?
I made the motion, and I'm satisfied that it has been vetted properly.
Hey, Councilor Maves, and then Gates.
Yeah, Your Worship, just looking at that, and whether we tender it or not, the recommendation is that we approve it, and whether we tender it or not again or doesn't matter according to the recommendation. So I don't think there's anyone works harder than this group of gentlemen here, and I'm happy to support the motion, the recommendations, which say that we approve the development. So
Okay.
I have no problem supporting that.
Thank you. Councilor Gates?
Yeah, Councillor Mays are actually good points. Who's the contractor that we're dealing with currently?
Well, let me just back up, because the recommendation isn't to hire Norjon. We're using their numbers to help establish what the budget for the project is. We're going to continue to use the Niagara Falls Lions to see if we can negotiate some other in-kind contribution or a better financial arrangement. So please understand, we're not awarding a contract here tonight. We're establishing a budget, and if you require additional information or an additional report before we hire somebody to come in and do that work, I'd be happy to bring that back to you.
Okay, a couple of things. One, I think everybody around the council table understands the work that the Lions do and the fact that they've committed to the project, that they said they're going to continue to commit to the project, and I think that we don't have to even have a debate on that. What I'm trying to establish is that we're saying, at least what I'm reading is we're saying if we do it now, and that's what the urgency became, there's a potential to save money for our taxpayers, because it looks to me the will around the table is let's get it done, and if there's an opportunity to save money, taxpayers' money, then let's move forward. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, okay, so the company's new, John, and have they said that if you retender it, they believe it will cost $700,000, or they give you any number that we may be able to say, well, we're saving $50,000, we're saving $75,000, we do it this way, or is there potential that it's actually going to be less if we re-tender it? I guess that's what I'm trying to find out.
Mr. Mayor, to the councilor's question, we haven't entered into any negotiations with the contractor. We're simply use their unit prices to establish a budget for the project. As you can see, the recommendation we're proposing to use $2014 anyways. If we can resolve the issue tonight, we can move ahead with some of those discussions that you're asking about, with the idea that if we can complete some of this work sooner rather than later, and at a favorable cost, then that's fine. Otherwise, you know, we can refer it to budget in 2014 and deal with it as part of that process.
Okay, Councilor Carrier?
So then, if we agree to the recommendation, you're going to use the unit prices and do what? Go out and negotiate with other contractors? Or, I think I'm a little bit lost, Jeff. What are you going to do?
We're not going to have time to tender the project this year, okay? You may recall when the original proposal came in, the Lions Club were going to deliver this project at no cost to the municipality. So we have assigned staff time to it, but we're at the point where we've got to go through the next stage. And in order to do that, we have to have a budget. if through the offices of the Niagara Falls Lions Club, we're able to find a contractor that can provide us with favorable prices, or we can negotiate something in our favor, then we'll be bringing back a report to explain that that's how we'll fund it. Otherwise, we'll be looking at following our normal purchasing policy, and we'll have to build this portion of the trail in 2014. All I'm asking for as part of this report is, do we want to build this? We're going to fund it from 2014 so that I can ask the Lions Club to go and commence their discussions or negotiations and provide that in-kind contribution towards the construction of the trail. We're not bound to use nor John or anybody else other than to say we need to have some numbers to establish the budget for the project.
And I have no problem. I just want to make sure that it's it's fair. Anytime the city is a partner with the Lions Club, obviously, we just have to make sure that we follow our procedures on how we give out work. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I understand that they're a partner, but it's still the city doing it with them, or arranging the unit prices, or getting the contractors with them. We just have to be careful how we do it. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
and we all know that we could take the unit prices and they could be great prices, but depending on when you bid, who's got work, who doesn't have work, we can't say today if we bid it, it'll be cheaper or more money. It's hard to say. If you're happy with the prices you have, and you know the pricing that's out there today, and you like the prices, then I feel better about it.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say that, I understand the concern here. We want to make sure that we get building. But, I think Niagara Falls Lions, perhaps they would like to speak to what their plans are. There are a number of contractors who can do this work. I'm sure that there would like to have, they might be able to negotiate some terms that are better than the city can. If that's indeed the case, then that's fine. And I'm hoping that they will, because the second part of our recommendation here is that we continue to try and secure some in-kind contributions towards defraying the cost of this project.
Was there anybody that wanted to speak from the Lions? No, I don't know if anyone. Yeah, if you'd like, sure. If you'd step up and introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Wayne Scott. I am the acting secretary of the Niagara Falls Lions Club. The reason why we're here tonight is that this project is very near and dear to the hearts of the Lions Club, and the amount of work that Lion Jim put into this and worked with city staff and with council. Unfortunately, Lion Jim isn't here to fulfill his dream on this. And we want to step forward and help that process along. We have been serving the citizens of Niagara Falls for 92 years. Not me personally, but we're making an effort, as you can see. And we would like the people of Niagara Falls to come and give us a hand. Now, we've given so many others a hand in the past. We would like to have the extension of the trail. It's mostly adults that use it. It's good for fitness. It's good for so many reasons. And it would be a good legacy for us, considering the years of swimming lessons, swimming pools, and parks and that the Lions Clubs have been involved in. And they've always followed through. And so partnering with the city on this, everything is, we're open, we're talking to one another. It would be good to encourage the people of Niagara Falls to support our spaghetti dinners. Wayne can tell you all about them. We would like them to consider us for their Christmas trees. And we've been doing this for so many years. We're part of the Christmas fabric of Niagara Falls here. And we would like all of this to continue, because it all goes in to helping the people of Niagara Falls, and the trail is one of those projects.
Any questions for Mr. Scott? Thank you very much for that. Okay, well, we've had a A lot of debate and discussion on the topic. There's a motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Ioannoni to move the recommendation. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Lions. Appreciate you being here today. Continue on with the dream of Lion Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it's not New John, it's Nor John, just for the record.
Whoever there.
Okay, moving on the agenda to item 1. Our Director of Municipal Works has a presentation in regard to the July 19th storm that hit Niagara Falls. Mr. Holman?
Thanks, Mayor, members of council. Just over 2 months ago, we experienced one of the most intense storm events that hit the city in the last 10 years. With extensive damage to our urban tree canopy, and we received rainfall volumes exceeding the sewer design capacity in some of the areas, resulting in sewer backups within the system. I know and we like to try and characterize or describe these storms, but based on our comparison with rainfall data over the last 40 years or so, this storm shows up to be greater than a 1 in 50-year storm, and I'll provide a little bit more detail on that as we go forward. The purpose of this presentation is to explain what happened, our response to the storm, and to provide some food for thought on how we can mitigate the impacts of climate change moving forward as we approach the next stage of our budget cycle. The storm of July 19th, you can see the red area there shows where the thunderstorms were scheduled to hit the southern Ontario, and they moved very quickly throughout the day, hitting the city sometime in the early evening. In some areas we had flooding and downed trees around 5 o'clock or so, and rainfall estimates reported between 75 and 100 millimeters. Now this was the forecast. What we actually experienced, if you look on the next slide, you can see that there's a series of cells that approach Niagara, and just in front of that is a cold front, which the weather experts call a gust front, which caused a lot of our high winds and our heavy tree damage. So the storm was an extended series of intense thunderstorm cells that kind of went through the city like a train. They went through in sequential fashion, with each cell dispensing more and more rain, which is problematic because as the system becomes overloaded, some of the low areas get full, the soils get saturated, and the system has less and less of an ability to move the storm water away. And some of our low-lying areas, like the park at FH Leslie on Valleyway here, experienced some severe flooding. The north end of the city and downtown areas of the city experienced the highest volume of rainfall over the duration of the storm. At the Stanley Avenue sewage treatment plant, they reported about 106 millimeters of rain and about 59 millimeters of rain within a 1-hour period. The areas that were hit hardest are our combined sewer areas, which are largely the downtown area. Combined sewers are single sewer in the roadway, which have catch basins connected to them. They may also have downspouts, weeping tile, which discharge water into the system at a very high rate, resulting in surcharging in that system. However, we did have other areas that are separated, that is, they have separate sanitary sewer and storm sewer systems that also were surcharged under the storm event, largely due to the connection of weeping tile to the sanitary sewer system. There was a lot of surface flooding, some areas where the water just had no place to go, and even with a fully functioning sump pump they had challenges getting the water out of the basement faster than it could come in. The next chart shows a rainfall graph. Now the scale along the bottom is time, and along the right-hand side is the rainfall intensity. And you can see that the blue line with the spikes show how quickly the storm came in and its kind of cyclical nature. There was a gap in between. The second wave came in and it hit fairly hard a number of times. Now, comparing that with the other curves, if you look at the red line, that was Hurricane Francis back in, I believe, 2003, and then Hurricane Katrina in 2005 is the green-colored one. Where you see those storms, they kind of ramped up, they hit their peak, and then kind of faded off. The storm from July 19th seemed to hit very hard, it hit again, and then again one more time, and then kind of died off. But by that time, the damage was done. And just so we understand, when we design our sewer systems, we use the criteria that's accepted widely across the province, and it considers your 1 in 5 year storm intensity, duration, and frequency. However, as much as we'd like to say that this is an engineered process, it also makes assumptions about the ground conditions in which the water falls. So, for example, if your soil is saturated or frozen, as it has in some cases in the wintertime when we get our winter storms, it assumes the system is properly maintained and fully maintained. It doesn't make any provisions for fluctuations in the intensity of the storm, like I've described here, and also doesn't factor in for direct inflow from point sources like weeping tile connections. Okay, in response to the storm then, we have received over 450 calls. We're trying to respond to each one of them. Over 160 claims have been filed with the city. I think the number's even higher than that now. And the majority of the claims were for basement flooding damages and sewer backups. So what can we do about it? Well, the city has one of the most progressive weeping tile removal programs, certainly in the Niagara region and probably in southern Ontario, where we provide grants to homeowners so they can help weatherproof their house. And this involves the removal of weeping tile from the sanitary sewer system, the installation of sump pumps, and the installation of backflow valves, which help provide some protection in the event of a major storm. However, in order for them to remain effective, they have to be maintained, and this requires a large responsibility on the homeowner to make sure that they're operating properly. The program itself is voluntary, and typically we have about 60 applications per year. Since the storm, we've generated over 200 applications, which is good news. However, we will have to look at increasing our funding to help us provide additional support for the RAP program in 2014. We're also working on a citywide master drainage plan. It's okay to deal with the sanitary sewage capacity, but we need to do some more work to identify where all this storm water needs to go. And at our meeting on October 8th, we'll be awarding a contract to a consulting engineering firm who will help us develop our a master drainage plan and have a look at our storm design criteria to make sure it is reflective of what's happening with recent changes to our climate. We're also working on a pollution control plan. It's a 5-year update that will involve a series of public meetings as well and help us strengthen our commitment to reducing CSOs and weeping tile connections. We'll be working with the region to start construction on a new CSO storage tank in Chippewa later this fall, and hope to have that in full operation by next year. And we're also working on a number of sewer separation projects. And the next slide shows you which projects we have completed over the past 5 years and some of the new ones that we're working on. I think the city's done a pretty good job in upgrading its investment and its effort in the sewer separation program. I think to date we're probably close to 7 kilometers of sewer separated in the past 5 years, spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $33 to $34 million. But there's more work to do, and as you can see, it has to be done in a sequential manner. You've got to start at the outlets and then work your way up through the system so that eventually you'll get to separate the sewers on every single street. They need to be done strategically as well, and we try and do the sewer work on the roads that are in the worst condition so we get the best bang for our buck. At our next council meeting on October 8th, we will be advancing a long list of projects that are sewer separation projects that we'll be looking for pre-approval to move ahead with the engineering on those projects. The last item I'd like to talk to you about is our efforts to increase awareness. I think part of our problem is that a number of homeowners are not aware of RAP programs and other information that things that they can do to help themselves. Things like downspout disconnections, sump pump installations, and lot grading that will improve and help protect their private investments in the event of a major storm. Mr. Mayor, this concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have in this regard.
Thank you for that, Mr. Holman. Are there any comments or anyone from council in regard to the report? Pretty comprehensive. You don't really appreciate the volume of rainfall until you saw it compared against the hurricanes. You realize it was substantial. Councillor Pietrangelo.
Thanks, Your Worship. It was a worthwhile presentation. I do have a couple questions through you to Mr. Holman. In the storm that we had in July, in terms of the areas or even homes that were flooded, were they predominantly in a non-separated area, or were they both in separated areas and non-separated areas?
I don't have the stats in front of me, but off the top of my head, I would say they're split. There might be 40-60, where it's 60% in the combined sewer area, but there was a surprising high number of basement flooding complaints in areas where we have separated sewer.
Yeah, that's what I thought, Your Worship. And I guess my next question was going to be, do we know the source of that, like what that can be contributed to? Because I think there's a conception out there that, or a perception, I mean, that if you have separated sewers, you're going to be okay from flooding. So do we know what the source of the flooding would have been in the areas that were separated?
It's hard to kind of characterize every single situation, but even in those areas where we have separated sewers, so those houses that were built in the late 70s, early 80s would still have weeping tile connected to the sanitary sewer, which introduces groundwater and in some cases surface drainage into the sanitary sewer. And then when it becomes at capacity, it will back up in the system. So, I know that there's a lot of concern about, can we make the pipes bigger? Can we ask the region to make the pumps have more capacity? But that's really kind of the bottom or end of the pipe type of thinking. If we can eliminate that storm flow at the source, then we can not only avoid having to try and squeeze it through our system, we can also avoid the treatment costs at the very end of the pipe. So that's kind of why our strategy is geared towards a top-of-the-pipe solution and asking homeowners themselves to be more diligent in helping to protect themselves and eliminate groundwater and rainwater from the sanitary sewer system. But that's kind of the issue that we had in those areas, particularly west of the QEW, where we have more separated sewers. It's sort of largely weeping tile connection.
And just, I asked Mr. Arafita to put the graph back up here because just a question I had is, to what rainfall do we need to reach before our system becomes overflowed? And I know we talk about a 100-year storm. I'm just wondering if staff have actually collected any data to see how many times we've hit a rainfall that has reached our capacity within, say, the last 10 years.
I don't have the answer to that question, but it certainly is in the terms of reference for our master drainage plan. We've been relying on standards or best practices or criteria that have been established across the province. But in these cases where we have these unique storm events, we're running into these situations where the sewers are backing up more frequently, and I think it's time to kind of redefine what that criteria should be. In those cases, we did experience some basement flooding in the hurricanes, and there was an additional storm back in 2003 that caused some extensive damage. Again, it's really hard to plan, where the rain's going to fall, because I can tell you that the rainfall data that we collected at the sewage treatment plant on Stanley Avenue was over twice as much as the rainfall data we collected at the water treatment plant in Chippewa. So, there's a lot of factors that come into play, and at some point when we complete our master drainage plan, we're going to use this information to redescribe or redefine what the design criteria should be for any new sewers that we put in the ground.
So, and just through you again, Your Worship, so when you say that you're going to look at the design and the criteria for new sewers, then you are going to look at the size of the sewer? Because, I mean, it would appear to me that if consistently now we're getting a rainfall that fills the capacity of our storm sewers, that we're going to have to look at one of two things, and it's either increasing the size of the trunk that takes all the water out, or having more outlets so that that water can get out of our system faster.
There's a number of different strategies. We talked a little bit about avoiding or preventing the water from getting into the system in the first place. If we can work with individual property owners and provide grants to help them tighten up their systems, we can avoid the major costs of having to excavate into the road and replace storm and sanitary sewers. But there are going to be some times where we have to provide additional outlet, maybe inline storage, stormwater management ponds, or in-ground CSO tanks at key locations. And that will all come out through our master drainage plan and our pollution control plan study.
Okay, good. Councillor Iannone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a call from residents from Russell Place today, and basically your question was, we installed sump pumps there. They're not helping. We have a 100-year storm, it seems, every 2 years now. So when you say that we could help residents tighten up their systems, what exactly does that mean? Because she has, the residents in that area have absolutely no understanding or say faith in what we're telling them they can do when their basements have flooded again and again and again, and this woman cannot get flood insurance again. Like, she's maxed that out. So what do we tell them?
Well, Mr. Mayor, this is a difficult question to answer because
Hard for us to answer them too.
under normal conditions or under minor storm events, those systems work great, and it's a cost-effective way to get the water out of the system. if you are asking us to design a system that will work under any storm condition, we're talking about multiple billions of dollars, and that's not something that would be a wise investment. It's taken us since the 70s to try and separate sewers through our annual sewer separation program. So to go back into some of those areas and then upsize those sewers will take us quite a long time, considerable amount of money. And that's why, you know, we have to balance both end of the pipe solutions and top of the pipe solutions to help us maximize what we have in the ground there now. And yes, there are going to be some times where the system just can't handle it. And I'm sorry, unless we have an unlimited supply of money to engineer the problem away.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And those residents are watching tonight, so I guess the simple answer is immediately we can do nothing for you. Because really that's the bottom line. What they have right now is the best that we have to offer them. That's what I got from that.
Mr. Holman, just for the, yep, I'll get you, Councillor Gates. Just for the benefit of the residents and those that don't understand, sometimes we speak of things because we're involved, but we don't realize, a lot of people don't know, sewer separation. Can you just, in a real simple layman's term, explain what that means? We're trying to go through the city, and we're trying to separate. And a lot of people have asked me, what the heck does that mean? So if you were to just sum it up, what does that mean?
Sure. You know, in some of the old areas of our city that were built, you know, 20s, 30s, when sewers first went into to this city, there was one sewer that was constructed out in the road, and things like catch basins or ditches or offset drains would be connected into the sewer. It would be responsible for taking all the water away. Since the late 80s, we recognize that you can't build a pollution control plant big enough to handle the volume of water and the volume of sewage that would be generated from an urban type of project or development. And so in some of our newer areas, we have separate sanitary sewer and storm sewers. Okay. So the sanitary sewer is intended to take all your sanitary gray water waste, and the storm sewers are designed to take surface drainage. The problem is, in a combined sewer, we're not able to, especially in the older areas where you have a lot of development, not a lot of green space, there's not a lot of opportunity for the water to percolate back into the soil, a lot of paved areas, hard surface. That water gets into the system and there's really no place for it to go. It'll work its way, you know, downstream, but eventually it will start to surcharge up the system and then back up into the laterals that go into the individual properties. In an area where you have a separate storm sewer and a separate sanitary sewer, the sanitary sewer still discharges ultimately down into the sewage treatment plants. It's over on Stanley Avenue. The storm water gets directed to natural water courses, or into ponds, or into pipes that outlet into the hydro canal or into the Niagara River. Okay, so they don't go in, they don't get treated. So when you start to introduce storm water into the sanitary sewer system, which is done through the weeping tile connection, then you have competition for capacity between your dry weather and your wet weather flows, or your sanitary sewage and your storm water, and as a result it surcharges and causes some grief. And I think the people over on Rosso Place had their system surcharged, their sump pumps were working, but the storm water was coming in to their sump pits faster than the pumps could pump them out. So that's basically our two system. And if you want to kind of break it up, you know, everything kind of west of the highway and north of Thoroldstone Road is mostly separated, but some of the areas downtown in this area here are on combined sewers.
So it's a double-ended problem. If everything combines in the sewer rainwater and sewage, then the treatment plant's treating both clean and dirty water, so it's too much capacity on that end, and on the back end, it all rushes into the same system. Instead of getting rainwater in your basement, you end up with waste in your basement, sewage.
That's correct.
And any idea, do we have a year anticipated in mind when we would have the city separated? Is it 20 years out? Do we know approximately how many more years to have it completely done?
Well, it's really a function of how much money, how much resources we want to put at this. Recognizing we can't have, the whole city dug up at the same time. It's just not practical. And in my previous reports to you, I've been indicating that we need to spend at least another $1 million a year. We're trying to leverage this money with the programs that are offered through the region, through their CSO MAP program or Combined Sewer Overflow Municipal Assistance Program. And if we can take advantage of that funding, we can speed up the process and move some of these projects ahead. Again, a lot of it has a lot to do with how much money we want to spend on the sewers, but that also means excavating roads and looking at other infrastructure in those corridors, like water mains and sidewalks and streetlights.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Councillor Gates.
Thanks very much, Mayor Diodati. Can we go to the last slide on this, please? No, it's this one here. It says preparing for a flood. I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can get this document into the hands of the residents, other than through the website, because there are a lot of people, especially in the older homes, that might not be able to afford a computer. But I think that's one thing that might help. The second thing, I can't speak for the rest of my fellow councillors, but I wouldn't mind a hard copy of the presentation as well. I know we didn't get that in our kit. And I guess what I was trying to find out, because I think we all got the calls, and I don't think there's anything worse, than having raw sewage in your house, in your basement. I don't think there's anything worse. I don't think you never look at your house the same again. And I think what we want to make sure is that none of this happened because of the fault of the city. And I think I've raised this 2 or 3 times now in Alpine. The Alpine area, relatively new. It's not an old area, yet they've had a lot of flooding, not just when it's a storm of the century. They've had other flooding as well, some 2 and 3 times. And I'm wondering if part of the report can't be, take a look at where our claims are coming, our claims, and then kind of divide them up into, we got, say, 100 claims in this area, we got 20 in this area, we got 30 over here, and maybe take a look and see if there's something in that area that's causing the problem. I appreciate the report, but I think we should expand on it. You've got the map. I think you can really tell where the majority of your claims are through whatever, and see if there's something that happened or is happening outside even this storm where people are getting flooding in those areas. I think that would be done. I'd love to see this document go to people, because the people I talk to, $5,000 deductible in insurance. I don't know about you and most of my fellow councillors, $5,000 is a lot of money to all of a sudden have to put it out. Now I know that sometimes it's the damage is $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, but $5,000 is a lot of money when you have a deductible of $5,000. Some don't have insurance, so if there's anything that we can do to take a look at outside the storm, areas that are still being flooded, maybe there's something we could do there, and then we can prioritize exactly where we're spending our infrastructure dollars to fix that, so at least fix the problems that we can. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And also a reminder, in your council packages tonight, this presentation that you saw is in your handouts. Councillor Peter Angelo.
Thank you, Worship. And I have one other question, I guess, through you to Mr. Holman. And I know I've asked the question before. I just want to make sure that it will come forward when you bring forward the full drainage report. And that has to do with the hydro canal. I mean, I think we have an opportunity in this city, because the hydro canal goes right through the city. We have the opportunity to use it as an outlet. And I just want to know that that possibility is going to be investigated. I mean, even if we were to take the separated sewers that are right there at the edge of the hydro canal and just let those outlet in so that it's only stormwater going into it, and maybe in the future, you know, we provide, I guess, bigger trunk outlets from the hydro canals that lead to, or sorry, from the hydro right-of-ways that we have throughout the city that lead to the hydro canal. I just want to know that that's being investigated, because to me that's a quick and easy way for the water to get out of the system. And if anything, I mean, OPG should be in favor of it, because that's putting more water into the reservoir so they can in turn make more money when they generate the power.
Any comment on that, Mr. Holman?
Certainly in the terms of reference, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the presentation? Okay, do we need a motion for receiving, Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, just for your
Okay, moved by Councilor Pietrangelo, second by Councilor Gates, that we receive the report. All those in favor? Okay, and that's passed. Thank you for that. Next up is item 2, RNC 2013-18, revised Niagara Falls Museum policies. And I believe, yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I asked if I could say a few words on this flooding problem.
Well, you know, the problem right now, sir, we've got a lot of claims in right now, and it's become a legal issue, so we're limited by what we can discuss publicly about the issue. If there's any...
I'd like to make a few comments. I've had 3 floods myself. This presentation...
Well, why don't you come up to the mic and maybe state your name? And, okay, moved by Councilor Pietrangelo, second by Councilor Gates, that you be allowed to speak. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. If you keep it tight, and your name and your address, that'd be, and please don't be specific about a specific property, if you could.
Well, I'll try not to, but...
Mr. Smith?
I'd like to thank the opportunity to say a few words. I have spoke at City Council before with my first flood. My name's Tim Lambert, and I live on Brookdale Drive in Niagara Falls, and I've been there for 37 years. I had no water problems up until about 10 years ago when the development started. I came to City Council. Thompson was mayor, and I did do a presentation. All these things that the residents can do in my area have been done. I have a sump pump. I have a backwater valve through the city after the second or third flood. There is a couple of concerns that I have. The Kaler Road pumping station, I know they're doing an awful lot of work down there right now. I don't know what they're doing, but that was part of the problems with some of our other floods. They didn't have the capacity, and they were putting in new pumps. Development is growing in that area. My concern is that maybe development should be stopped until they get the flooding problem under control. I understand, and I wasn't able to attend the meeting, that they're developing down Mountain Road, Kaler Road area. Where is that water being pumped? Is it being pumped my way? Because I live about 4 doors up from the pumping station. So there's issues with that pumping station. My understanding is that KC subdivision had a pumping station that's been shut down. Is it still there? Maybe they could start that up to alleviate the area of the water. Future development, I think, is a big concern. You just keep pumping the water and sewage into the existing pumping stations, and they're getting overwhelmed. Obviously, it's a fact, because I've had 3 floods. This one I didn't get. My neighbor was flooded out. The neighbor across the road was flooded out. Mine was sputtering and spitting and everything else, but I didn't get the flood this time. So it halfway worked. So there is a benefit to having the backwater valves and that there. But when am I next? This rain we had on Saturday, the water wasn't going out of the drain system on the streets fast enough, and it looked like it was backing up again. And I don't know if that's a 50-year, 20-year, or just a bad storm. But there is a problem with that. Shriners Creek. We have a Shriners Creek that's supposed to flow water around. They've got catch basins and that. Water's backing up. The woman over here that's at the meeting, she lives on Kaler Road. The storm that we had just the other day, the water's backed up the water's sitting there. You should have a program to clean out Shriners Creek and make sure that everything's flowing in the proper direction and away from the existing systems. So that's another one. That's about it. We've requested a meeting, a group of us in my area. We've had problems with dates, so nobody else is here from that area, but we do have big concerns that you're building and building and building and building. You're putting it all into the same system, and it's overloaded with what you have now. Like I say, I know they put a nice roof on the pumping station. I see big pipes down there. I don't know if they put another machine in there or what, but you got to do something. You got to do it quick. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, we've had meetings regular and ongoing. Today we had another meeting with some family who had flooding issues, and so we're trying to case by case, but we've had hundreds of calls, and so we're getting through them. And Jeff, you know, to your department, you're working very hard. We know it's endless and it's tireless, and we appreciate it. It's thankless at the same time, trying to get ahead of it. So absolutely, and we appreciate the situation a lot of people are in, and we're definitely working through it. We're trying to get the problem solved. Mr. Clerk?
Beside Mr. Lambert is Miss Ingram. She's provided a correspondence. Based on the content of the correspondence, I mean, I will refer this to Municipal Works to respond. It is partly a claim, so it has to go through our normal claim process. So I just want to acknowledge that we have it.
Okay, and that's being referred to Municipal Works to be dealt with. Yes, Councilor Morocco.
You had to look at the name.
Yeah, threw me out for a second.
I'm sorry, Mayor Diodati. With it's coming out back. It's just a question I had that, you know, obviously we're seeing a lot more flooding in the last while, and to the gentleman's point there about the new build, I'm just wondering. I mean, we've had big storms over the years. There's no doubt, but I mean, they're just more consistent. And the rain is coming down, I think, a lot faster, and the system can't hold it. But is it also contributed to the fact that we're building more, that there's more build out there that is actually going into the sewer? So is there a comparison to see what the sewer could take before a lot of the new build over the last, say, 5 years? I'm not too sure. So I'm just wondering if that's something that maybe there can be a report provided to us and say, you know, compared to 5 years ago what the sewer went and what was flushing then and what it could handle compared to now in some of the areas that are flooding, is it due to a lot of new build? It just brings it to light. You have to ask that question. So I'm
Mr.
not
Holman,
sure.
what would you prefer in that case? How would you like to address that?
Well, I don't really want to speculate, but I can tell you that as we become more urbanized, as we expand, and we're looking at provincial guidelines that tell us that we have to put larger houses on smaller lots, there's less green space, there's less grass, less soft areas to absorb some of this water and recharge the groundwater table. So this water, you know, we're eliminating ditches, we're putting in curb and gutter and all these things. This water is getting into the system a lot faster. And even though it might not be more water or more intense storms, we have to handle it a lot quicker. And that's kind of a byproduct of the new development, the new design guidelines that we've adopted, not recognizing what, you know, potentially what the impacts could be on our older infrastructure, which was designed, you know, for the circumstances of the day. But it is a very good question, and something that I think maybe we need to address on a broader basis through the master drainage plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, and just to Mr. Holman's point, I mean, wouldn't that be a good argument if we had flooding in the newer developed areas of the city? But I think the gentleman that got up and spoke said that he lives on Brookdale, and Brookdale is not one of the newer, I guess, design subdivisions. I mean, it's one of the older ones, and they're all on I guess, larger lots, you could say, 50 by 150, as opposed to the new design. So I don't really know if I think that it's the new design that would contribute to the flooding in established areas. If we had flooding in new areas, I could agree with that, but not in established areas.
Councilor Maves?
Yeah, Your Worship, Mr. Lambert mentioned that the Casey pumping station was shut down. Is that fact, and is it obsolete, or can you elaborate on that?
I've heard those reports as well. For those that don't know, the city does not own the pumping stations or operate them. They're operated by the region of Niagara, and they do have standby power and backup pumping in most cases. However, I do understand from some of the reports that they were challenged as well, but I don't have any of the data or the background to really speculate and say that it was a problem in any given area.
No, I'm just wondering if that was shut down, was there any problems in that area during the storm? Would you know that?
Councillor, if the pump stations fail or they're not operating at the maximum capacity, that would cause surcharging in the system and potentially lead to some of the problems that were reported.
What would be the reason they would shut one down? You mentioned it was shut down. Was it?
Well, it could be a number of things. Could be just that they're full. There are backup supplies. In some cases, there's overflows, but for the most part.
But the region themselves wouldn't shut them down. This would be.
No, they would not.
Okay.
No. The only reason why they would stop working is if they failed for whatever reason.
So I would assume that it's going to be up and going again. Is that correct? Once this is corrected or whatever happened there.
Well, as the gentleman had mentioned, that they are doing some work on it now. I don't know whether or not the construction or the work that they are doing is in response to the storm, or whether it was planned work that they had. I really don't have a lot of information to say that the pumping station was not performing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Mr. Lambert has the answer to that.
We just said that. Total answer, but
When we had our other floods, Casey subdivision was decommissioned and they pushed everything over, to my understanding, over to the Kaler Road because that was their gem at the time. They were doing this pumping station and it was fairly new, or they were building onto it, so they shut the Casey down and redirected the water over towards Kaler Road. Whether that's changed in the last little bit, I don't know, but it doesn't look like it. Obviously, more development's gone in there, and that's, thanks.
Thank you. Maybe we need an update from the region on the status of our pumping stations. Are there any other questions or comments of council? Okay, thank you for that. And we'll look for more information to come forward in the near future on this topic. Next up is item 2 of our reports. RNC 2013-18, it's the revised Niagara Falls Museums policy. I'd invite our manager of our museums, Mr. Clark Barnett, to come up here to the microphone and bring us through this report.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm going to read from notes because I've been known to speak too quickly and get myself into trouble. So I'm going to try and make sure that I stay succinct and to the point. What I'm bringing forward is some policy updates. As many of you are aware that the city absorbed the museums in 2011. So a lot of these policies had to get updated and come in compliance with what the city is updating in all of its policies. Our policies need to be sped up a little bit quicker because the province has asked for 2 policies so we can qualify for granting a program, an operational program. So this is why we're coming separately for the policies themselves. There's going to be 2 points. I'm going to talk through the policies a little bit and give you an update about what they are and why we're doing them. They are unique policies that are separate from other city policies. In the past, we've had our own health and safety policies or human resource policies, but of course, being part of the city, we fall under the compliance of those policies. So really, these are the policies that create the unique establishment of the museums. The province is looking at these, that the city recognizes that the museum exists and has a uniqueness to it and operate under a different sphere as well. So only the first two are actually required for immediately for the 2011 standards, but we thought we'd bring all of them forward at the same time. All the policies, the other policies brought forward have been vetted by the province over time. Over the past 7 or 8 years, the province requests a couple of policies to come forward and be approved by them in order to get the grant. So these have all gone through that process. The collections management and the physical plant came up in 2011 as policies, and with the changeover we had to go through the process of updating them here. So the provinces wanted us to get this to them. So basically the standards are the basis of these policies. Really they do set the benchmark for the museums. It is how museums function in our province and how we move forward. There's about 180 museums across the province that meet these standards and get operating funding from the province to operate. And about 70-ish are municipal museums as well, fall under the same guise as us. And basically this is linked to financial support. We get $36,000. Last year we got $36,000 plus from the province to operate the museums. And that is based on how many incoming applicants and those types of things. So I can't guarantee it'll be 36 this year, but it's going to be in that ballpark, we assume. So the major changes from old policies is really the change in government. So we have to go through all of our policies that we had already established, that the province had already passed, and basically change border museums over to City of Niagara Falls. So a majority of the changes, probably 90% of the changes, deal with just that simple change in wording at that level. The collections management policy was a little bit more lengthy and time consuming. We wanted to make sure we get this right. A collection of a museum is really the core of what it is, what it can be, and what it means to a community. It really establishes what we have in the collection and where we go forward. And so we looked at this one a little bit closer and really looked at some key functions of how the policy functions, and also looking at other municipalities on how they function as well. Our major changes, I'll just go through some of the biggest changes in any of these that are ones that I sort of wanted to highlight, is the fact that our accessions committee is a bigger change. We've actually made it more of a staff decision as to what we bring into the museum. In the past, there was an accessions committee that actually dealt with this issue. What most municipalities and what we believe on our own staffing is that we sort of know what we don't have, what we need, and how we go forward in the future. On the back side of that is that museums do de-accession items at times, and the de-accessioning committee, what we have added is that it's going to be a staff decision. It's going to be the manager and the curator, but it's all going to go through the advisory committee that is appointed by this council. So therefore, the public don't have a say in what we do get rid of. That's our major change on this policy. The collection development is part of part of this as well. We put into this policy what we are looking for. Really, this came out of the interpretation development that we did at the museum when we expanded the museum in 2011. We went through a process, and former staff and some current staff went through the process of looking at what are the key stories that need to be told in this community, what artifacts tell those stories, and that's reflected in this policy as well. So we want to key in on those stories that we feel are unique and special for the residents and the people of Niagara Falls. So really priority is given to items that could go on display. That's not always the case, but certainly when we went through that step and that process of building new interpretation of the museum, that becomes a factor in it, and that therefore new items coming in have a greater potential of going on display because we feel those are the stories that our community should be hearing and listening to. We also have, I'll get back to the physical plan in a minute, the next policy that has come up is a community policy. And really this is the role is that to make sure that community is involved in exhibitions, in special events, programs, and what it shows. And it puts a lot of emphasis on the partnerships and volunteers, which we strive very hard in our strategic planning, as well as how we function around the museum to make sure that there's partnerships around the community. And really that community policy addresses a lot of that. An exhibitions policy is a really straightforward one, as most of you know, that a primary role of a museum is really to showcase the history of a community or showcase the history of whatever community they want to present. And this really makes sure that we establish that. It puts emphasis on the accuracy, the research, and the planning, and ensure that the collections are not put at risk. The interpretation and education policy ensures that we look at multiple audiences, that we do things to make sure that we don't just deal with kids. Education, most people think of kids, but obviously a lifelong learning exercise has gone into a lot of these things, that we're looking at different public programs, special events, and different ways to engage the community, get to understand who we are and what we exist, and that includes adding new school programs to what we do. The physical plant is obviously, again, to make sure that we care for the collection that resides within the museums, but also that we have adequate space to do all the museum functions that we need to do. Research space, workshop space, collection storage space, that we have security for the collection, that our staff are safe, and that the collections and the information we store are safe for the longevity. As a basic rule, we look at about a 150-year lifespan for anything that comes in the museum. So the physical plan is that space that we actually make sure that that exists. It also references a disaster plan that we had to develop last year with the building moving into the new facility. Obviously, our disaster plan had to be changed and modified based on how to get out of the building, how the building is constructed, and what new facilities we did have. And it also ensures that we inspect, we train our staff, that we monitor, and we attend to maintenance issues within a budgetary constraints that we have. So all those are put into the physical plant policy. The last one, the research one, really focuses on the fact that we are a knowledge-based organization, that research is, should be recognized, that we need to conduct research both on our own collection and within our community, and that we also pursue new research, that we get that information out there, and also that we allow others to conduct their research as well. So that's really the overriding sort of umbrella of what the research policy is. That's really, the policies in a nutshell really do fit those standards. Like I said, they have been vetted through the province already, and really it's a good governance way to look for how the museum functions in the future. The second part, and also that's right, the Museum Advisory Committee met last week, and they are in full support of all the changes that we put forward in these. I was asked to sort of bring a few highlights about what we've been doing just the last little while as well, in conjunction with what we've been doing at the museum. To this date, we've had about 10,000 visitors come through, actually over 10,000, because we were just under until the Niagara Falls Night of Art. So we've had over 10,000 visitors to the museum from all over the world, seeing what the community is about and understanding what it means to be from Niagara Falls. We've had over 1,000 school children since the museum opened. This we hope to certainly increase. Last year's teacher strike certainly hindered our early visitation. It came on strong at the very end. We're hoping to sort of have a more successful year with our educational programming. Our biggest success for sure on the educational programming front is we added a Medieval Week program. In April, we worked with Brock University teacher candidates who were volunteers with us, doing some of their block placements with us. And we had multiple schools through on the 5 days that we ran that program. It was a fantastic week that we've actually expanded to a 2-week program this year, and able to offer more programs and more school kids through that, and find a real niche in the marketplace. Nobody else in the Niagara region is able to offer this type of outreach program. We're developing 2 new offerings every year. This year we put together with those teacher candidates and with our museum staff, we've added a bridge engineering component to learning skills, and the other one was the Medieval Week, was our other new one this year. And of course, we extended it. We do continue to provide free Thursday nights. Therefore, we're allowing more of the community to come in to see what we have, what we do. This is a majority of these people are locals coming through the museums and really finding a new home in the Main and Ferry area and sort of coming back to the area. We've got our Hitchcock film series coming up very shortly, working with Professor Joe Nix, who's put that together. Our Conversations Cafe is actually a Brock University initiative that we partner with them on. Quite often we have Regency dance lessons going on that people can just join in, and a whole lot more. And we think we found a real niche market in the Thursday nights where people are coming in to visit the museum and have something really fun and entertaining to do around the museum. And interesting enough, this Sunday we also are working with Oakwood Cemetery, Niagara Falls, New York. There's a book called The Kite That, I always forget the title of this one. The Kite That Bridged Two Nations. The Kite That Bridged Two Nations. About the story of a little boy who flew the kite across the river in 1834 that started the first suspension bridge construction. So I don't know if they can tender out a kite flying competition, but that's how they did it the first time. But it's a great little children's book that was put together by a children's author, and the book launch, like I said, it will be on Saturday over the river and then on Sunday on this side of the river. So we've got some neat programming coming up. I've also brought in our new educational guide that sort of highlights some of those new programs that we have. So I'd like to hand those out, and maybe the teacher's gone. But that's sort of the educational offerings that we have now that just came off the press very recently. I also wanted to highlight last Thursday night was Niagara Falls Night of Art, put together by Rec and Culture staff and ourselves at the museum, in the marketplace, in the old Servant Hall area, at the Regal Diner, at Batter Up Fish and Chips, and other places around the community. We had over 400 people through the museum. That's probably our best count that we have of attendance that night, but it was really great to see the night come alive in this area with a real dynamic way to sort of see the area and go get a bite to eat and do other things. And last time we were here, Don Jackson and Gord West presented, and Don came in as full regalia talking about the Hear the Cannons Roar event. That took place on July 25th, the 199th anniversary of the Battle of Lundy's Lane. We had about 400 people out that night as well on the battlefield, just to get people ready for the 200th anniversary that we're preparing for next year. Last few quick things. We've got our Egypt Gift of the Nile exhibition is up currently. We're working on an exhibition called Space with the Astrolab from the ROM. And then next summer we'll be doing an exhibition on the history of motels in the area. So we're quite excited about the upcoming, the motels exhibition we're very excited about. It'll be our first in-house exhibition that we've designed in-house. So it's going to be something special. It really sort of showcases an important part of our history. And of course the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Lundy's Lane is coming up. I'll probably be back at some point to sort of bring you in. We're very close. We're working with the Lundy's Lane Historical Society and Next Theatre Company on putting together a really unique event that is highly participatory and involves the residents of this community. And we want to make it something special that people remember for a long time. Much like we talk about the 100th anniversary, we hope the 200th anniversary is equal as special. You know, this council did support the new museum and the construction of the new museum. So I just want to highlight a few other, things that we feel are really unique showcases of what that facility is able to do. We're having a lot of groups that are, a few groups that are using our spaces regularly. Communities in Bloom regularly meet in our space. Women's Places renting our space and using it for a lot of their meetings. We've just worked out some negotiations with the Catholic School Board has a social justice program that they'll be hosting at our site as well. Our unique location right in sort of in that hub of the bus area certainly adds to that, and sort of in the heart of the city and equal distance from all the high schools is leading to that. And we found a real niche market that I don't think we expected, but bridal showers tend to be coming to us on a regular basis. The gentleman next door had an event there for a bridal shower. We've had some baby showers. Well, you're not getting married, but
having a baby.
So we have bridal showers coming because, again, it's one of the nicest rental spaces in the city, and we're finding a unique area. We had one just this past weekend as well. We're also finding a lot of young families are coming out on our Thursday nights. We're finding they're coming out regularly with our different programming. We're a safe place. We're a free place. We're a place to get a bit of education. And one of the best stories, in my opinion, that we've heard over this whole transition is a singular event, but it's a single family that started coming back to us on the Thursdays. And they kept coming back to us regularly with their young autistic child. They eventually became members. And what we found out is that this family and this autistic child found our space to be a safe environment. This was a place where he started learning. He took real pleasure in the first year that we were open. We regularly played a great little video called The Boy Who Stopped Niagara Falls, which is a 1940s National Film Board about a boy who stopped Niagara Falls. But it led him to explore a little bit more. He eventually went to Adam Beck to explore, and this became his safe place. We also get calls once in a while, or they come through to say that he's not in a good mood, but certainly he gets in a better mood. They bring him to the museum because it's a familiar space, it's a safe place. And certainly, I think of all the things that we've done and all the events that we've hosted, sort of that impact is certainly one that we weren't expecting and one that we certainly cherish the most. So that's my full report on what we're doing. I guess I'm thankful to have this opportunity to sort of bring forward the stories, but also certainly need the policies to move forward as well. So
well done, Clark, and thank you for that. Obviously, you put a lot of work into that. We appreciate that very much. Are there questions or comments of Council for Mr. Burnett? Yes, Councillor Carrier and Councillor Morocco.
I was just going to move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Councillor Carrier. And
actually, I was going to move it as well, so I'll second it. But I just wanted to say to Clark, thank you very much for the presentation. Very well done. And I want to say, from a marketing perspective, you've been doing a very good job, because I'm up on a lot of the social media, and you're out there.
We're trying.
Getting it out there. So. Job well done. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I have to echo that comment as well. You know, we're now very proud of our museum, where before a lot of us didn't even know we had one.
And people know we exist now.
Yes.
Or more people know we exist.
Yeah, absolutely. You made your impression in the community, and it's a positive one, which is just great. And real quickly, I don't know if you recall the date. When was that kite flying contest you talked about?
1834.
34. Was it a young Wayne Thompson that won that contest? Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Carrier, second by Councillor Morocco, that we receive the report. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Burnett. Next up is item 4, CD 2013-06, the Chippewa District Association report. Okay, just before we do have a speaker, requested speaker to that report. Mr. Clerk, is there anything you wanted to add other than the report itself?
Well, I can talk after the speaker. I mean, I think the genesis of this came about through a meeting I attended in the summer. Mr. Broomer, Tamas Broomer from Sweet and Savory, he and I have a lot of email contact, so he was looking for some guidance. I attended a meeting back in July, very positive meeting. I think he and his group have some great ideas. They had a number of questions. I brought those questions back to the applicable staff. Applicable staff fed me some of the responses, which are incorporated into the report this evening. I think there's a lot of potential in Chippewa. I think there's a lot of potential for this group, and you know, but there's been some specific requests, and I think they want to speak to those this evening, and I can respond to those later.
Great, fair enough. If you could please welcome, state your name and your address, and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council. My name is Dylan Mullaboom. I am a longtime resident of Chippewa, grew up there, and now I'm a resident. And I'd like to go through the background of our CDA. The Chippewa District Association, majority of our members are not from the vicinity of Cummington Square. Membership is represented by individuals and businesses and community organizations from both south and north of the river, as well as east and west in the district. Current membership is 16 individual members, 12 businesses, shop-based and home-based, and 1 independent community organization. The District of Chippewa Association has also raised membership of the Facebook group Chippewa Community News to current 192 members. The Chippewa District Association can also claim credit for the rejuvenation of Chippewa Days after 27 years of neglect. And we'll be proud to organize this in the future, organize and manage this in the future on the first civic holiday of August each year. The Chippewa District Association is open to work with the residents of Chippewa, all local community organizations, both home-based and shop-based businesses. The CDA is prepared to liaise and work with the Niagara Falls Council, regional, provincial, and federal agencies, and will advocate and represent the interests of the majority of the local community. The CDA will continue to promote events and special projects that members feel are important to the interests of the Chippewa community and visitors to the community. Traditional BIAs are restricted to small localized areas and cannot represent the entire district. Further, they tend to be exclusive to a few business interests. The Chippewa District Association is not advancing the three motions it has presented to Council because of any marketing considerations, nor because of any zoning regulations, nor for any business operating benefits. The report as presented by staff to Council will be misdirecting the Council to discuss issues that are not in the CDA's motions. And we rather ask that the Council consider the three motions within the context of the following. The Chippewa District Association is asking Council by way of three motions to respond positively to improving the District of Chippewa, the lives of its residents, and the viability of existing and new businesses in the district. Every one of the motions have everything to do with recognition of Chippewa. The Chippewa District Association asked the Council to disregard both the analysis and the rationale and background report presented by staff, as this would be completely misleading. As stated earlier, the motions have nothing to do with marketing, zoning, opening hours, etc. To spend the Council's valuable time on discussing what it's not about would be unfortunate. We ask rather that the Council consider and debate the following. So the rationale for the designation of Chippewa as a tourist designated area is to put the district on the map as part and parcel of Niagara Falls. So attached there is a map at the back there, and if you look around, just take a look and see if you can find Chippewa and see if it's adequate to attract people to our area, and is even highlighted enough to show the whole area. So B, as designated tourist area, the District of Chippewa would be recognized as a valued asset of Niagara Falls, especially when highlighting its unique nature, its river network, its potential for water-based activities, its history of portage, and the origins of the Welland Canal. And C, recognition and designation as a tourist area would provide the community and community organizations additional access to funding future projects from local, regional, provincial, and federal sources. So now on to the rationale for the WeGo bus stops in Chippewa. The District of Chippewa is the one and only place on the Niagara Parkway section of Niagara Falls where there is not a single WeGo stop. This ought to be enough reason to correct this anomaly. Further, it seems that planners of the WeGo route decided that Chippewa is not of any importance and received no recognition that tourists may want to visit the area, the upper part of Niagara Falls, Laura Secord's original home and the beginnings of the Welland Canal. Or they would not enjoy the tranquility you will find away from the hustle and bustle of the downtown area and Clifton Hill. It would be a mistake to consider the WeGo bus stops locations merely by popularity and numbers. It would be an asset to Niagara Falls to consider giving the tourists more well-rounded picture of what Niagara Falls has to offer them, or is Chippewa not part of the Niagara Falls scenery? We ask the Council to consider the WeGo bus not by current numbers or the like rationale, but rather as a positive recognition of Chippewa as an integral part of Niagara. The rationale for changing the metered parking in Chippewa. Prior to the village of Chippewa joining the city of Niagara Falls, the district enjoyed free parking on all its streets and in the parking lot of the Chippewa Public Library. And you can see this from the aerial photo that was attached on your package. The Chippewa District Association is asking the council to recognize that Chippewa needs to be treated in a like manner to other areas in Niagara Falls. This motion is asking that all side streets either have free parking or at least 2-hour free parking zone on all side streets and in the parking lot of the Chippewa Public Library. This motion is asking that the council direct the staff to harmonize all side streets parking and parking in the Chippewa District Library with all other areas in Niagara Falls. This motion is asking that council stop asking for courts to decide the issue, but rather direct the staff to the correct and current situation, which is evidently far removed from the historic Chippewa downtown model and is clearly not in harmony with other areas of the city of Niagara Falls. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Willaboo. Are there any questions of council? Okay, seeing none, thank you for that. And we have another presenter as well. That was it? Okay. So, yes, Councillor Wayne.
Just a few comments. I think they're asking, that there is an existing tourist area designation for the north side, no?
Yes.
I think they're asking that it be extended across the creek to the Cummington Square area, and that makes a lot of sense to me, because now that the Woolens and China shop's gone, we don't have Kingsbridge Park swimming area anymore. Chippewa, Cummington Square in Chippewa seems much more of a tourist destination than the north side now. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And, you know, giving it the recognition that they're requesting makes sense too. I mean, you think about what other communities have done, Port Dalhousie, part of St. Catharines, St. David's in Queenston, you know, there's Cook's Mills in Welland, Ridgeway, Crystal Beach, you know, the other municipalities around us have given a lot more formal recognition to their former village areas than we have done. So I think this is reasonable, and the points they've raised about the metered parking make a lot of sense too. That's the only library in the city whose patrons are expected to pay for parking. You know, there's a free lot at the Victoria Avenue Library. There's no charge for the Stanford branch at Town and Country Plaza. The McBain Center branch is free, and yet Chippewa, we expect the patrons there to pay to park. So, you know, there is some unequal treatment going on, and you know, we have 2-hour free parking on the side streets here. Mina Ferry, the side streets aren't metered. So, you know, what they're asking for to me seems very reasonable. So I'd certainly like staff to investigate these requests and perhaps report back on responding to them.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, I know there's been a meeting with the clerk, even though he doesn't pay attention to when you're speaking, you know, with the group. And the clerk actually made some recommendations, which I understand that you don't agree with. Is that accurate? Yeah. Anyway, I just want to say first of all that hopefully nobody has not recognized and appreciate what Chippewa is to the city of Niagara Falls. It is, without exception, a very separate, unique little community. There is no place in this city, and probably the region, that has such a unique waterfront setting like they have there. And I've had the opportunity to work with the dock committee in the last couple of years, who've done an amazing job. We were just at the opening of the dock. We had the one on the other side. Now the playground and the dock expansion at the Sodom Road area is on stream. And these people are putting in immense hours of work to try to upgrade and beautify. And this is, without exception, an area that should be considered for marketing. Niagara Falls brings people here, and you have Clifton Hill, and you have all of the busy areas, but there's people who would like a very tranquil, relaxing atmosphere, and there's none better than sitting on the new dock down there in Chippewa to experience that. So I think that where you're suggesting that you're not interested in marketing, and all you have to do is make contact with the Niagara Falls Tourism, and we'd be happy to change the maps that we have there to make sure that it's designated on all the maps that go out to the people, and to identify this as a special, unique, and different area than the busy hub and the activities that go on in Clifton Hill. So I think that the requests are certainly reasonable, but I think that they should go a little further. I think that marketing is a major aspect of bringing people's attention to all of the wonderful things that exist down there in Chippewa. And the extension of the WeGo bus may, in fact, if that is possible, encourage people to go the next step to try to get down and enjoy the amenities there. So I think there's a lot of work. I appreciate what the clerk was suggesting, and I think the recommendations made here, plus the ones that the clerk has suggested, because I think this one comes up a little short, because if you have something special, why wouldn't you want to market it? And that can be done as easy as identifying on the maps that Niagara Falls Tourism puts out, and being identified on their website as a special and unique area. So congratulations to the group, and congratulations to the Jay Mason and his group that worked so hard down there in improving the waterfront, which they've been doing for years. So I'd be happy to refer this to our staff to work with the people to come up with a plan and a report back to council to not only accomplish what they'd like to accomplish, but what we as the entire city would like to see accomplished, which is a recognition of a very unique and special area, and one that is unique in this community and maybe the region. So move.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councillor Thompson to refer this to staff. So it's not the recommendation, it's referring this to staff. Councillor, just so I'm clear, or?
Yeah, to work with the group to try to accomplish the objectives.
To work with the group to accomplish your objectives. And that's seconded by?
And I don't know any other way of doing it with a simple motion, because we have to have the transportation people look at the WeGo schedule and the busing. Of course, we got lots of time, because that probably wouldn't kick in until next year now anyway. The parking issue is certainly something that has to come back and be investigated. If you're just talking about the library having free parking, that can happen in a motion, so I'm not concerned about that. But when you're talking about all the streets and the opportunities there, it's going to take some study and to hear both sides of the story.
Fair enough. So that's moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Wing. I know the clerk wanted to comment on this.
Yeah, I think what's being lost sight of is the fact that we all have the same goal in mind, and we all recognize the same things about that area of Chippewa and the potential for Chippewa. I mean, I think everybody's in total agreement with that, and when I met with the group, they wanted some recognition as a tourist district, so I went back to the appropriate staff, Mr. Hurlovich, planning, Mr. Filicetti, and I said, okay, how do we accomplish this? The comments in the report are actually verbatim from Mr. Hurlovich why it doesn't make sense from a planning point of view, because on certain things, because then the businesses which are already zoned general commercial in that area will be limited from what they can offer now. But we'll certainly work with the group. I think we have the same goals in mind, and I came to the same conclusion that Councillor Thompson did. The most effective thing here is for the area to market themselves and market themselves through Niagara Falls Tourism, and I did have that discussion with Tony Williams at Niagara Falls Tourism, and she echoes exactly what what Councillor Thompson says. So the goals are the same in mind here, and what I did was basically look at our mechanisms within house as far as these sort of designations. One of the other things I mentioned in the report is the fact that we did a similar thing for downtown a few years back related to Todd signage. We passed a resolution calling it a tourist area so that they could get the Todd's signage, because that was one of the requirements, was for the council to pass a resolution. Now, that in and itself doesn't necessarily drive people, and I'm sure the people downtown will tell you that. That doesn't necessarily drive tourism. But it's one thing that the council can do, and certainly we'll work with the group if they make those, if they make an application for Todd signage. I do think it would behoove the group to formalize their organization, because they will find if they start to make applications to people like Trillium Foundation, they have to have a solid structure in place that's been in place for a number of years, but the city would have no issue and staff would have no issue coming back with appropriate resolutions supporting any of those future applications. So I think we have the same goals in mind with regard to this, and I think there's a lot of great potential there, and I certainly commend Mr. Broomer especially for his efforts. On the traffic issues, and we don't have to belabor this any longer, but council did make a motion back at the end of May on those issues. Staff will be coming back in October on those, and obviously with WeGo, you know, that we have to make sure there's more of a financial case justifying that.
Okay, fair comment. Yes, Councillor Wayne?
Yeah, just on the tourism designation, I think this is a case where the label is important, and I think what they're looking for in designation is not zoning designation, but just sort of a recognition, like the sort that Lundy's Lane has. And I know along Lundy's Lane, yeah, there's some properties that are zoned tourist commercial, but there's also an awful lot that are zoned general commercial. There's some that are zoned institutional, open space. So I don't think tourist area designation necessarily means you're zoned tourist commercial. They just want the designation, not the zoning per se.
Not the higher commercial taxes. Any other comments or questions before we call the vote? Okay, we call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous. So thank you for that, Mr. Clerk. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. What's the will of council? Okay, moved by Councillor Iannoni, second by Councillor Thompson? No?
2013-45.
Okay, okay, that one. All right. Does anybody want any other ones pulled from the motion? Okay.
Do you have a motion to move the balance?
Okay, yeah, sure. So we got a motion by Councillor Iannoni, seconded by Councillor Carrio to move the balance of the consent agenda. Call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, great. So we're dealing with MW 2013-45, citywide beautification contract and contractor changes. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah. Anyway, there's in your handout, there's a letter from QP Union asking that this be deferred so that they can have more dialogue. And when I first read this, I recall at this council several years ago we were having some financial difficulties with the budgets and trying to control it. And I recall the QP Union president indicating that the resources of the city forces would be willing to stand up and be counted when it came to doing extra effort and extra work rather than contracting out a lot of the work. We had a little discussion in the committee previously where I was corrected in saying, well, we already have this for many years where we contract out the beds. Well, we do, but we also have, in my opinion, been moving to contracting out other things. Example, a park in my particular area, Stonefield Park, where I live, where always city forces were there, did an excellent job, came in, stayed there, and when you went over to the park, you could see the excellent work and the care that was taken. Since then, it's been taken over by a contractor. They 8-10 people rush in there and do a cutting and do some work, and then they're gone off to someplace else, nowhere near the same that the work that was done by the people in the city. An example, the snowplow took out a whole maybe 10 feet of an entire boulevard around the park. When it used to be the city workers, that would have been rectified. We've gone through the entire summer, and it's just all grown in weeds, never been touched. Nobody has ever even thought about trying to replace that sod. So the only point I'm trying to make is that I agree with with our frontline workers who are doing a job for us, an important one, and they're suggesting that they want to do the work through the city forces rather than contracting out everything. Certainly, we're not going to get out of that business completely, but I think it's appropriate to have a dialogue and discussion and give them the opportunity, once again, as they suggested before, to step up and be counted and be part of what we do here at the city. I know this report suggests that there are bills owed to contractors, and it shows you what you get when you get some contractors. We've had to let a couple go. The other ones are being suggested. They were not the low tenders. So what I'm suggesting is we have to pay our bills. I would move that we pay our bills with respect to the work that has been done and the obligations that we have. But we refer this also to the city staff to work with our frontline workers to see if we can't assist them in, pardon me? Okay, she agrees, so that makes it complete. Anyway, I so move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Iannoni. Yes?
Thank you. And Ms. Lee also highlights that by doing so, we'd be able to put our casual and our seasonal workers back to more work. So, I mean, I think that's the purpose of the council, too, is to make sure that employment is year-round. I'd prefer to see our guys working than to see a contractor come in and do it.
Okay, Councillor Gates.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear the other side of the table talk on this issue. I'm in agreement, but I think the bigger issue here is, and I think it's happening right across the province of Ontario, quite frankly, is that not always the lowest bid is the best. And we're seeing it over and over again, where you take a look and you grab the lowest bid, you contract the work out, so the seasonal workers lose their jobs, but then you see the quality of service that is happening. This is another example of that. When you take a look at the bid, it's substantially different, a lot lower. I mean, it's not even close. That should put up a red flag. We had that dialogue, I think, with other things over the last year, where we took the lowest bid, and then we had some issues around that as well. But I think you're seeing this more and more right across the province. Taking the lowest bid, and then you end up coming back and having to make corrections to it. At the end of the day, it costs you more money in the long run. Example of that, I guess, we're dealing with right now, quite frankly, is the Gale Center and some of the stuff that's happened there. You took the lowest bid, and look at, we're probably going to end up spending somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 on some of the mistakes that were made in that particular thing. So I would love to see the work come back, but I think more importantly to me is that you are represented here by CUPE. There's no secret there, and I would always think that before we contract to work out, the best thing to do is have dialogue, sit down with your unionized employees and say, hey, listen, this is what's available, can you do the work, and have that kind of dialogue. And I believe that's what the letter that was given to us tonight's about. Just sit down with them, have a dialogue, and at the end of the day, if we can put more people back to work, and it works well for everybody, absolutely. But I think the bigger issue here for me is that we really have to take a serious look. The lowest bid's not always the best, and it's happening not only in this city, but it's happening right across the province of Ontario. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Carrier.
I don't disagree with Councillor Gates, but when we vote to award a contract or a tender to the bid that our staff recommends, I'm assuming that they've already checked out the contractor to the best of their ability. This is going to happen once in a while, but I'm sure that our staff looks into the background of the contractor that we award the contracts to and the jobs that we award, and they're giving their best advice to us as to award that contract. I'm sure they wouldn't be giving us the advice to award a contract to them if they didn't think that they could do the job.
Why don't we get some feedback from our CAO on that one, Ken?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a couple comments on this. And this was a case where we did have a newer contractor that hadn't done work with us or a lot of work with us before. Now, a lot of this work was on the Roberts Street Boulevard. And this was work previously done by Niagara Parks Commission. So this wasn't work previously done by our own QP people. So this contract involved a lot of that work. The contractor simply was not up to the challenge to keep that looking nice. It's the main entranceway into the city. And we had another contractor, as you see tonight, that we engaged partway through the season to finish the work. And I think everybody would agree that entranceway has looked pretty good the latter part of the summer. Just to some of the QP comments. We do have ongoing dialogue. In fact, we had another similar issue that we raised at a labor management meeting just this past week. So we do have these discussions with our union. We sit down with them when we are looking at contracting certain things out. We sit down and have dialogue. We don't always agree. And we sometimes will be here saying we're going to contract out, and sometimes we're going to be here saying we're keeping the work. I can tell you, though, that none of the employees with these contracts were sitting at home. All of our employees for these contracts were gainfully employed, and while these contracts were working, while we were working these contracts, our employees were doing other work, whether it be on our parks or on our trailways or reassigned to other work. So this was additional work that was never done by us before. We've had a number of similar contracts for a number of years. As Councillor Thompson points out, we do look at rejigging our contracts from year to year, and where we find opportunities, I know Mr. Holman's doing this all the time, if there's an opportunity where we can bundle work with our existing parks people, we will do that. So these programs will change year to year depending on new work that we take on in either new subdivisions or new areas. And but I just want to make it clear that we do continue to have dialogue with our union. As I said, we don't always agree on the method by which we're providing this work, but we certainly do have this dialogue with them.
Thank you. Councillor Ioannoni, Councillor Thompson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my guess is they never agree with QP about contracting out, because I can't imagine QP ever agreeing to contract something out. First of all. Second of all, if it's more expensive to have our guys do it and we're contracting it out to save money, how are you saving money if they're not doing the jobs properly? We talk about, Councillor Gates talked about us getting the lowest tender and it not working out. That's starting to happen more often than not in the last year at this council. So maybe we need to take a sober second look at that, because we are throwing money hand over fist at the Gale Centre now for mistakes that we made, and maybe going back in your labor management meetings and taking a look at this, so we're not contracting out to landscapers who aren't doing the work as opposed to our employees who can stay further employed and do the work. Might be more cost efficient for us. And I'm not surmising he's in the labor management meetings, I'm not, but I can't imagine QP ever agreeing to contract something out.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, well, I am in the labor management meetings. I sit in on all of them. I'm not the lead. Pardon me? Yeah, I usually sit there I just need to be there mostly as an observer. Trent Dark, our HR director, is the lead on our labor management meetings, but I would say I'm in 95% of them. One thing I would say, though, is that with this contract, the low tender was significantly lower. And you're right, that maybe should have been something that we red flag. But I can tell you that even with the additional work that we've done and the contract we used, we are still at the end of the year below our budgeted amount for this work. So it's not that we're over budget. Some of this work gets billed back to the region because we have a partnership on Robert Street. So at the end of the day, we will still be below our budgeted amount at the end of the year.
Okay, Councillor Carrio. Oh, sorry, I got no. We got birthday boy first, and then you, Councillor Carrio.
Yeah, but what I was trying to do was to refer this to staff to deal with it in an appropriate way that you would treat any of your employees. Sit down and discuss with them if there are opportunities, and there's no secret about the system that exists here as far as temporaries and permanent people. Here we have the CUPE union suggesting they're willing to step up and take on some of this responsibility. You zeroed in on the Robert Street, or Falls Avenue as it's called now, area that the region had before. I wasn't talking about that. That's a new situation that we had. Was there discussions with the union if they could take on that responsibility?
Yes, we had conversations with them on all of this contract probably 2 years ago, Jeff, or a year and a half ago, but there were discussions that were held with it, yes.
Yeah. And they agreed to that?
No, I didn't say they agreed with it. There were discussions with it.
That's the problem.
As indicated, we had
all
discussions.
right, so it goes back to Councilor Iannone, that there's never any agreement. And I think that's unfair, and I think it should change. And I agree 100% with Councilor Gates and his comments.
Got to be there.
Hear that?
Got to be our birthdays, Mr. Tom. Okay, the city clerk would like to comment.
Yeah, just one comment more to Councilor Carrio's point. I think this project and this contract highlighted one point, and that was that we put out what was called a request for tender, where basically you go low price. And in retrospect, we realized that was wrong, that we should have done an RFP on this project. And so this has been a learning experience for us. So, you know, if we do go forward, putting aside any of the labor management issues, we're going to ensure that it's done properly in the sense that we're not just looking at price, we're looking at quality of work, references, etc.
Okay. Is there any other comment? I laugh when I hear about the lowest bidder comments. There's a astronaut, Alan Shepard, who was on the Freedom 7 rocket ship, and they interviewed him afterwards by Walter Cronkite, and he said, you know, he goes, my God, to think that this thing was built by the lowest bidder as he jettisoned into space. So something to think about. Anyway, yes, Councilor Carrio.
Just one comment about the lowest tender, Your Worship. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. I don't know how many tenders we call in a year, but in 99% of the cases, we accept the lowest tender, and in most of those cases, we don't have a problem. It's not like it's being suggested that we seem to be having a lot of problems with the lowest tenders lately. So I was hoping that staff might comment that that's not the norm and it's not the case, and most of the time we choose the lowest tender, and most of the time we don't have a problem.
Mr. Holman?
Yeah, I think the city clerk had pointed out the issue there. It's one thing if you're buying a product that has very definable specifications, but when you're buying a service, you have to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting, and that's why I think the process should be a little bit different. We need to be more diligent. We need to know that the contractors that we do agree to hire are going to adopt the same corporate values that our staff would have, and provide the same level of commitment and have the resources to do that. And I think that's a lesson learned from the process. But for the most part, when we're hiring or when we're purchasing products, the low bidder, I think, is fair competition, and that works. When it comes to services, we need to be a little bit more diligent.
But I was assuming that in most of the contracts that we award on a week-by-week basis, there's even comments in the tender that you have checked on the work that they've done, or they've done work before. We don't just award tenders to the lowest bidder without having checked their background. That was my point.
Mr. Mayor, that's indeed the case, and we questioned them about the low bid. They said they could do the work. We checked the references; they were good, but unfortunately, didn't play out.
My point is, in most cases, you do the checking, and you don't have any problems.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, then we'll call the vote. Yes, Councillor? Ready for the vote? Okay, it's moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Iannone, that we refer this to staff. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Pay our bills and...
Further matter to the staff and the union to have discussion about the contract.
Okay. Okay, so we're approving the report, paying the bill, and having discussions with staff and the union?
You're approving recommendation number 1. Number 2,
As recommended from the QP.
So you have clarity, Mr. Clerk?
I have clarity.
All right, that's the most important thing. Does everyone else have clarity on the motion?
Yeah, 100%.
All right, we'll call the vote then. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. Okay, moving on to presentations and deputations of our official part of the meeting. First up, we have a presentation from the Niagara Community Foundation. I believe we've got Liz Palmieri. Welcome, Liz. And she is going to speak to council about something. I won't take away your thunder. I'll let you do the presentation.
And can I move this?
Yep, sure.
Good. Hi. Mayor Diodati, members of council, residents here in council chamber, and those watching on Cogeco. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you this evening about a number of items, all of which are good news for the community. One of the leadership roles that the Niagara Community Foundation has taken since our inception in 2000 is the promotion and education of the impact of philanthropy in our community. While this 4-syllable word is often hard to pronounce, it's also a concept that is misunderstood. You don't need to have lots of money to be a philanthropist. You don't need a university degree to be a philanthropist, and you certainly don't need to be over 70. Philanthropy involves a generosity of spirit, a desire to help, and a firm belief that you can make a difference in your community regardless of how much or how little you have to give or what you have to share. We read every week about the generosity of school children and residents in supporting a variety of charitable causes with bake sales, runs, walkathons, penny and garage sales. Many of you supported the fundraising that Alec Hurlovich did as he raised funds to support Wellspring through an endowment he created at the foundation. And we certainly are appreciative of the many volunteer hours that go into running and supporting our community organizations. Canada is the only country in the world to have named a day to celebrate philanthropy. National Philanthropy Day on November 15th recognizes and celebrates the profound impact that philanthropy and those active in the philanthropic community have made to our lives, our communities, and our world. November is also the month when the United Way campaign is wrapping up, when local charities are starting their annual holiday campaigns, and when people are thinking about their year-end donations. The Foundation wanted to find a way to raise the awareness of the importance of philanthropy and to recognize the contribution that so many people and organizations have made to our wonderful community. It is because of these reasons that the Niagara Community Foundation has set as a priority to encourage all municipalities to join with us in proclaiming November as Philanthropy Month. I've included with my presentation some suggested text for the proclamation, and I encourage your municipality to join us in this initiative. And to start off the month, we will be celebrating Random Act of Kindness Days on November 1st. Our partners, we've been doing this is the 4th year, have included all of the school boards, the college and the university, the United Way agencies, municipalities, and many in the business community. We officially launch Random Act of Kindness Day at the Seaway Mall next week, and I would like to invite members of council, staff, and residents to join us on November 1st in celebrating Random Act of Kindness Day this year. I brought with me some posters and Random Act of Kindness cards, and that you can use those to promote the day. I've also included in my presentation a list in which different ways in which people can and groups can take part, and you may even want to consider giving your bylaw officer the day off so that no bylaw infringements will be reported on that day. I mean, how kind is that? I'd also like to take a few moments to thank Mayor Diodati and city staff and the hotel owners for their support to the foundation through the Sleep Cheap Charities REAP event. As you know, some of the proceeds that we receive have been placed in the Niagara Falls Community Fund. The gifts from this event, along with those from other Niagara Falls donors, bring the total capital in this fund to almost $450,000. This is by far the largest unrestricted local community fund in Niagara. The earnings on this fund, along with some of the proceeds that we receive from Sleep Cheap, support special projects organized by local charities that benefit Niagara Falls. Projects like safety equipment and improvements to the nightlight shelter, operated by the Boys and Girls Club, new accessible playground equipment for Club Italia, CPR training for staff at the Niagara Falls Art Gallery, workshops for secondary school students on mental health issues, and furnishings for Hannah House Maternity Home. Since 2006, when we first partnered with the city, more than $200,000 in funds have been received, that we've received from Sleep Cheap, has flowed back to local projects and services. Now, before I close, I'd like to give you a quick update on our work over the past 12 months. As you know, the foundation is quite unique in our community. Unlike other charitable organizations, we work with donors to establish and build permanent legacy funds, which are held as a perpetual gift to the community, their legacy. Over time, these endowment funds generate significant earnings to support grants to a multitude of worthwhile community projects forever. Since 2001, we have granted over $5 million to charities, and we experienced remarkable growth last year, where we started the year with $12 million, and as of this month, we now have more than $22.5 million in our endowment fund. Much of our growth is now coming through estate gifts, which makes our work somewhat bittersweet. The generosity of donors, some of whom we have never met, is truly remarkable, and their impact will be felt long into the future. In fact, one of our largest gift came last year from a Dr. Cherevko, who had his practice in Niagara-on-the-Lake and Fort Erie. And he made a gift to support 5 Ukrainian organizations, one of which is the Ukrainian Catholic Church here in Niagara Falls. So that church annually will start to receive, in 2015, $40,000 a year to support the work that's going on in that building. So it's a remarkable legacy to his community. I know all of you may not remember, received an annual report at some point in the last year. Does this look vaguely familiar? Yeah. So what I've done is I've actually brought along extra copies for all of you, so that maybe you could share this with somebody in your community who you think our message would make sense for them to hear. This is an organization, is one of which I've been proud to serve as the executive director since 2000, and I would be remiss in my role if I didn't encourage each and every one of you to consider creating some type of legacy to support this community which you all so proudly serve. It is something that I, and along with many other people, have chosen to do in partnership with the foundation. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to invite you to proclaim Philanthropy Month in this November, to encourage you to celebrate Random Act of Kindness Day on November 1st, to thank the community for its support to us through Sleep Cheap, and to bring you an update on the foundation, and for me not to stumble once over saying philanthropy. So, now I've got these reports and posters and stuff. I don't know who to give them to.
Thank you very much for that, Liz. And I'm looking to council if there's any comments. And I know I've got Councillor Morocco, then Councillor Thompson. Okay.
Oh, okay. I was just going to make the motion to move it. Liz, I just want to say, you know what? You've done a wonderful job over the years. We see you out there. You're always very active. And also to the mayor and the Sleep Cheap and all the hotels as well. It's a great partnership, and it's wonderful that you're able to provide some of those funds to some people that wouldn't have access to the funding ability. So thank you very much for all your efforts. You've done a wonderful job, and we hope you keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maves?
Yeah, I'd like to also congratulate Ms. Palmieri on her efforts in this. I think I've seen you out on several of the golf events, standing out in the heat and everything else and supporting her project, and it's certainly worthwhile what you're doing, and much appreciated. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor. So we've got, so this is a motion to proclaim Random Acts of Kindness Day on the 1st of November, National Philanthropy Day on the 15th. I was fine with it until you said that. Philanthropy Day on the 15th, and November be proclaimed Philanthropy Month. So there's a motion by Councillor Morocco, seconded by Councillor Thompson. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Okay, next up is our planning matter, and I would ask our city clerk to introduce the next item on the agenda.
Your Worship, a public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city zoning bylaw to permit a 14-unit townhouse semi-detached dwelling at 7712 Badger Road and part of 7720 Badger Road. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on Friday, August 23, 2013, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment to participate in any site plan process, if applicable, or preserve their opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets outside the council chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Arafita. I now ask our Director of Planning, Mr. Hurlovich, to explain the purpose and the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is a rezoning application. The property fronts on the south side of Badger Road, west of Montrose Road. The property is depicted here. There are two houses on this property. The small house in the middle behind the tree would be demolished to create a new entranceway to this townhouse development. The red brick house just behind, a brown brick house just behind the tree would be retained, so that the frontage lands would remain much as they look now with the neighborhood. The property is depicted here. It's approximately 1.6 acres in size. So again, you can see the long blue lot extending to Badger Street. That's where that small stucco house is. It would be removed to provide a new access way to the rear lands. The white box just to the kind of top left is the brown brick house that would be retained, and the rear lands of that property would be incorporated into this development. The majority of the lands in the surrounding area are single-family detached dwellings. The property does abut some city-owned lands as well as hydro lands. The proposal for this development is a long driveway to come in and access the townhouse units. The applicant is proposing 14 townhouses in total. On the site plan as well, you can see the existing house at the top left corner that would be retained to maintain street frontage. There are 4 townhouses on the west side that would back onto the existing single detached dwellings. Those would have a minimum rear yard of 7.5 meters, which is our standard rear yard depth for residential properties in the city. Similarly, the block of townhouses on the south side have the same 7.5 meter setback at the rear that would back against the hydro corridor. They are asking for a reduction in the minimum side yard setback from the typical R4 zone. Typically in the R4 zone we require 5 meters. They're asking for 3 meters. But in a typical R1 zone, which is a zone adjacent to these, the typical side yard is only 1.2 meters. So it's actually double, more than double, what would be required for a single family house. They're asking for a zone change. The R4 zone would permit both apartments and townhouses. We're recommending that they only have the townhouse units and or semi-detached units. You can see units 9 and 10. There are only 2 units linked together, so that makes them a semi-detached dwelling rather than a townhouse dwelling. So, because they're keeping the house at the front on Badger Street, they need a reduction in the lot frontage, and that would be 17 meters, which is basically the width of the driveway and some landscaping next to the frontage. Rather than the standard 35% lot coverage, they're seeking a maximum lot coverage of 36%. I'd point out as well that that is, in the report it says a minimum lot coverage. That was an error. The maximum lot coverage would be 36%. The minimum lot area per dwelling unit is also recommended to be 450 square meters per unit. The standard R4 zone would be 250 square meters per unit. So significantly higher lot area per unit than the standard R4 zone. And then last but not least is the recommendation that each of the units have an attached garage so that they again reflects the qualities of the residential dwellings in the neighborhood. As I mentioned, the zoning is for a 1.6 acre parcel for 14 townhouses. We did have a neighborhood meeting, which is required by our procedures. 15 neighbors were in attendance. They raised a number of concerns, including whether or not the units would be rented, whether it would be a devaluation of their properties. They had also concerns about impacts of traffic on Badger Road and off-site drainage. The applicant did address those, and I've addressed some of the other comments as well. The provincial policy statements, again, are encouraging municipalities to incorporate 40% of residential development through intensification. This is an intensification project. This development will be quite similar to the infill development that occurred on O'Neill Street near Dorchester Road a few years ago, where the townhouses were put in behind single-family detached dwellings. The official plan designates it as residential. The maximum density is 50 units per hectare. This project has a density of 22 units per hectare. The project is low-rise, that is, it's basically two-story units, and therefore compatible with the heights of buildings in the surrounding area. The proposed townhouses would have a 7.5 meter privacy yard or rear yard behind them, as well as privacy fencing would be required around this, as it is a multi-family development, and that is one of our requirements. Again, 14 units is not expected to create traffic impacts on Badger Street, as it's identified as a collector road. The zoning on the property, as I mentioned, is an R1B zone. They're asking for an R4 zone. Most of the modifications I've already outlined when we were looking at the site plan, so I'm not going to repeat those. The one thing that I didn't cover is that it's also recommended that there would be an H symbol because there would be a noise study required because of the proximity of this development to the QEW, and we would also require a record of lot or a site condition because of past uses on the property. As well, the applicant is seeking a deeming bylaw because, again, there are more than one parcel involved. The deeming bylaw would be necessary to remove those lot lines and create it to be one lot for the purposes of this development and for the purposes of zoning. In the future, when this development does proceed, it would have to go through site plan and would have to go through a condominium application before development can occur and sales of the units could occur. We've concluded that the project can be supported because it does conform with the official plan. Building height and setbacks are compatible with the surrounding housing, and we're recommending that council approve the zoning bylaw request for an R4 zone and restrict that to the 14 units, and that the bylaw also include the H symbol for the noise study and the record of site condition. Those are the highlights of the application.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hurlovich. Are there any questions or comments of council at this point? Okay, seeing none, excuse me. Members of the public are advised that failure to make an oral or written submission at this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral that it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheet will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 3419 of the Planning Act. Council will now hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment. Is there anyone here that would like to speak? Yes?
I do.
Okay, if you could come forward and state your name and your address, please.
I'm Kelly Brunaccioni, and I'm here with my husband James, and we live at 6502 Kendale Court, which is actually the boulevard to Badger and Kendale.
Okay, it's Bruna...
Choni.
Choni, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hello, and thank you to Council for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Kelly Brunaccioni. I'm at 6502 Kendale Court. I'm here as spokesperson representing the group of people in the gallery all of you with your hands. And also responsible for the 75-plus signatures that came in the petition that you have in your packages tonight. I will keep it short and somewhat sweet, I hope. To describe our neighborhood, it is located off the main street, set back in a mature, quiet subdivision made up of cul-de-sacs, courts, and crescents. Many of us have lived there for 20, 30-plus years. We have vested interests in keeping our neighborhood safe, positive, and a positive place to live in. I understand the new mandate for infilling vacant land. But for us, who again have been there 20, 30 years, that's changing the rules of the game, and that's not fair. What is being proposed is just too big for our area. If we wanted to live in a newly developed area, that's where we would be. Some concerns that have come up in speaking with neighbors are the traffic, and I'm sorry to disagree with anyone, but the traffic is horrendous. I have witnessed at least one accident in the past 6 months on the corner of Badger and Montrose, turning out. I come out of there every morning at 7:30 and there's a 4 and 5 car wait. Charnwood would be another street that's just the block up from us again. Big traffic problems. And I've witnessed 2 motor vehicle collisions myself in the past 6 months at the corner of Charnwood and Montrose. If there's any councillors that live in that area, they can definitely attest to the difficulty that we have there. Other concerns that we've spoke of was noise and the great possibility that our property values would drop and our location would be a less desirable one. In conclusion, as we approach an election year, we ask that City Council respect us as taxpayers and just say no to this application for rezoning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions of council for Mr. Shona? No questions? Okay. Is anyone else here other than the applicant who wishes to address council? Yes? Yeah, sure, you can come forward. All we ask is, number one, there's a 10-minute time limit. Number two, that you don't repeat what's already been said.
Okay, I'll be a minute and a half or two.
Perfect. So if you could just state your name and your address, please.
Sue Halliday, 7696 Badger Road,
okay.
And I'm here with my husband Ray. And we live next door to the proposed development and will be the most impacted by this. We're not against the development, however, it could be improved to make it more acceptable and less intrusive for all of the neighboring properties. This would make it fit more in character with the neighborhood. Since Dugays are the ones who are going to benefit from the development, the proposed plan should be altered to put the road along the side of their home, which would be in the middle of the development, and adjust the number of units accordingly with less density. Backyards could then be abutted up against neighboring backyards, which would cause less noise pollution and maintain privacy. As well, allowing this many units with acceptable parking would put a parking lot near the bedrooms of our home or someone else's home on the Echo Court side. We currently have a fenced yard because our yard contains a swimming pool. Our fence was damaged by something hitting it, with the fence post ended in towards our property, so the posts were not hit from our side of the fence. This caused the height of the fence in the damaged area to drop a couple of inches below the allowed bylaw height. Someone filed a complaint with the city over this, and we had to repair the fence at our cost due to the fence bylaw for swimming pools. Allowing traffic along this fence line opens us up to liabilities. We also understand the land is going to be tested for contaminants. The vacant lot at the rear of the property has been used as a soil transfer site for years and with varying strong odors. It has also been used as a site to store and repair large equipment and dump trucks. The most environmental practices have not been used, such as burning plastic containers with diesel residue in a fire barrel and not covering the dumps loads of landfill when trucking in and out of the property. In closing, we would like to thank you for your time and any and all consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Holliday? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Oh, yes, Councilor Iononi? Okay.
Maybe through to our staff. Was that an illegal business they were running in there, an excavation or a service? They talk about servicing new big trucks and big vehicles. Was there an illegal business sitting there?
We'll get the answer from our clerk.
Well, I can tell you that we secured 2 convictions under the zoning bylaw.
With the applicant that's here this evening?
I believe so.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions? Okay, is there anyone else? Yes, step forward. Welcome.
Mayor, Jim Diodati and Council. My name is Maria Silvestrone, and I'm at 7641 Charnwood Avenue. I am not objecting to the application, but I am concerned. I'm across the field from the applicant. I am the only catch basin in the area, and I get everybody's water. I have a problem in the winter with a lot of snow melting, and it feels like Niagara Falls. I can't prevent the water from coming because water just goes to the lowest point. Mr. Duguay spoke to me just before council opened, and he said he saw the condition and the situation that I'm in. I am the lowest point, and I'm the only catch basin, so I'm getting it north, south, east, west, everything comes there. There is a catch basin on Montrose Road, but because of a burb that was built on 6661, or is it 6611? That's Kevin, his name is, across the field, just behind, to the side of the applicant. And he built a big burb, causing the swale and the water to drain up further, so that the tunnel that used to catch the water going to Montrose is no longer viable. It just comes straight across and down to mine. So half of it used to be caught on one side, and that was fine. It used to catch half of it. The city, under Mr. Holman in 2004, and the hydro all coordinated, and they reconfigured the land, and everything drained because the health department was very concerned that the water was just standing there. Because of West Nile virus and all these things that happened, they took care of that. They normally do not take care of that with hydro. But because of the West Nile virus, they regraded, and it was working until the burb came up. When the burb came up, now it's redirecting the water, and I have it doesn't go anywhere but my property. So I'm asking council if they can either put a deeper groove in that and bring it up a little bit further, or put a catch basin on the other side, on the north side, directly behind Mr. Duguay's property. Also, Mr. Duguay has built up the property to the point where the water is draining to his neighbor, and it is coming straight across. I'm getting the water now more than before. Trucks have been going up that hydro corridor, and he's dumped tons of dirt to fill in some of the spots that were swales, causing the water to just come down that hill. There's a little hill, and it comes down that hill, and it just, when there's storms and snow melts, you're just getting inundated with water. Right now, my property, my home, has not flooded. The sump pump is working. Everything is done. It seems to be working okay. And I wasn't home at the time that they had that great big snowstorm, the rainstorm. I was away, out of town at a funeral. So I have no idea what happened to the home, but I didn't find any water in it. I'm also concerned that, there's a second area, that the hydro has cut their trees next door because of the hydro lines, because the hydro lines are behind us. This has really nothing to do with Mr. Duguay, but it is causing a problem with the catch basin. They have cut the trees, they have left it there, big, huge trunks, and now people are dumping their broken trees, and it's huge, massive, big mound of trees and branches, and it's causing the water not to come down. It's causing all this debris to come and plug the catch basin. We can't go back there and cut because of our medical conditions. My husband and I cannot go back there and do that. But the hydro used to come and used to clear and clean up that area with a weed trimmer. They no longer do that. And when they come down and they cut that grass, they veer off because of that mound of dirt and debris. They veer off and they don't cut and clean where the water is draining directly into the catch basin. So I'm asking for a day of kindness that if you could please look into this. I have been to Mr. Bryce, I have been to the engineering department a couple of times, but they asked me to wait until this came up so that I could address all the issues. And I hope that you can help me, and I believe that you have the letter that I wrote. And I do have pictures, but if you need it, I can give it to you.
Thank you, Ms. Silvestrone. Councillor Iannone?
Thank you, and through you to Ms. Silvestrone. The head of public relations for Hydro generally watches this meeting, and I will bet you she is on it already. If not, Councillor Thompson and I are the representatives there, and we will make sure that's done for you.
Former Mayor Thompson, I worked under your mayorship, and I know a lot of you personally, Mr. Pietrangelo, Mr. Bart Maves, Vince Cario, you know, everybody. You've been to my father-in-law's 100th birthday. I know most of you, and I work for the city. So I thank you very much. I know you're doing a great job, and your staff is doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, it should be noted in the plan here, it does show that at the plan of condominium site plan stage, a stormwater management report will be required from our municipal works. So they've addressed that in the report. Are there anyone else other than the applicant who'd like to speak to council tonight? Okay. This is your chance, because we don't go back, so as long as everyone knows. Okay, so we've heard everything, we've heard the arguments, we know that where everybody stands in the back of the room. Moving forward, and there's no other comments or questions of council at this point, council will now hear from the applicant or his or her representative. Ms. Premi, welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening. I'm here actually on behalf of my partner, Rocky Vaca, who is counsel to the applicant. The applicants, Norm and Joanne Degay, are with me this evening, as is Lucy Borghese, who is their agent. I do have a booklet with some photos that I would like to refer to, if I can just pass those along. Thank you. Thank you. I won't get into a lot of detail with respect to the application, as Mr. Hurlovich has very accurately summarized what is before you this evening. Essentially, it is a proposal for a 14-unit townhouse semi-detached development in the nature of a condominium development that is intended to have as a target market mature people. Ms. Borghese took some photographs of conceptual developments that are intended to be similar in nature to this, and I have provided you with some photographs excuse me, with respect to 3 similar developments. The first one, Mr. Hurlovich mentioned the O'Neill Avenue Delphina Gardens. There are 2 photographs found behind tab 1 of the document book. Those are, again, similar in scale and in nature to what is being proposed. At tab number 2, there is another similar townhouse-style condominium development at Montrose and Swordstone Road, excuse me. And then the last set of photographs that were taken deal with a third similar style development at 944 Eagle Ridge Road. And these are just to give you a flavor with respect to what the actual proposal would be. There's not been a builder hired or anything of that nature, but this is just to give you an idea that what we're looking at here is a similar concept, bungalows perhaps with lofts, with some flexibility in the bylaw, potentially to have 2 stories. This is a development that is specifically a site-specific amendment to impose specific controls that will tie it into the community and the neighborhood. It's not a broad-based zoning bylaw amendment. The application is supported by your staff. I reviewed the report very carefully, and it's my view that the report is clear, it's concise, and it balances the policy environment very accurately. It's also supported at the regional level, and it was not opposed by any public agency to whom the application was circulated. So very respectfully, my submission to you this evening is what you have before you is not just an application that's supportable. This is an application that is desirable, and this is the type of application that is encouraged in the policy environment that we have in Ontario, and indeed the policy environment that you have in your municipality through the policies of your official plan. Infill development is not always popular, and you've heard from some neighbors tonight. In fact, you've heard from a neighbor who is representing a group of neighbors who have raised some issues with respect to the development. Orderly and efficient development is supported and encouraged at the provincial and the local level. But again, it's not always popular. And that's the situation you have tonight. You have a development that is supported very strongly by a policy basis, and there have been some concerns raised by the neighbors, and I'd like to just very briefly address some of the concerns. The common thread through the written submissions that I've seen from the neighbors deals with the valuation of property. And as you're aware, there's simply no proof, there is absolutely no proof or evidence that a development like this will devalue property. It's simply not a fact. And it's also not a planning ground, so I'd ask you to consider that when you make your decision this evening. A couple of the neighbors have raised in their written submissions, and we heard an individual tonight raise the issue of noise. The proposal is to place an H on the zoning until a noise study can be done, and my client is happy to do that. There were issues with respect to drainage. The last lady that we just heard from raised some issues with respect to, sounds like pre-existing drainage issues that are unrelated to the application. There will be a drainage full study that will have to be done as part of another stage of development approval through the site plan or the condominium plan. So any issues with respect to drainage will be dealt with, and your Public Works Department has not flagged any specific concerns with respect to drainage for a development, a small development of this size. Same goes for traffic. This was reviewed by your staff, and there were no concerns raised with respect to traffic. It's a collector road and an appropriate development for such a road. One of the other very important points that I'd ask you to consider when you're looking at this is the very detailed review that was done by your planning staff. If you look at page 4 of the planning report, you will see that many of the concerns that have been raised by the neighbors have already been contemplated, reviewed, considered, and addressed by your planning staff, and there have been controls placed on this development that address some of these issues. For example, you have the noise study being required. You have a record of site condition that will be required to deal with any environmental issues that may exist on the property. You have a limit, a restriction of 14 units when you have a policy environment that arguably would support many more than 14 units. You have a requirement for garages. So the impact and the integration issues that you have heard about have already been considered and addressed by your planning staff. And again, this is a very thorough, very thoughtful, very complete report. So my submission to you is that this is an application that is not only supportable, it's encouraged, it's desirable, it's a density that fits very well within the neighborhood, and I would ask that this application be supported by you. Under the Planning Act, as council, you are the decision maker, and you have criteria that you should follow in determining whether or not to approve an application. And the key criteria is, are there planning grounds to support the application? The submissions that you've heard asking you not to support the application, be it tonight or the written submissions, are not based on any planning grounds. On the other hand, you have your staff report that sets out appropriate planning grounds, looks at neighboring uses, sets out restrictions to help integrate this with abutting lands, applies the policy, and makes a recommendation to you. I'd ask that you accept the very well-reasoned advice from the planning staff, the professionals that you pay to look at policy, and apply that provincial policy and your own policy to an application. To be very frank, the decision, the final decision, whether it be here tonight with this council, in this chamber, or whether it be months down the road in this chamber by the Ontario Municipal Board, is going to be based on planning grounds. So it's not appropriate, in my very respectful submission, to turn down an application unless you have a basis to do so, a basis grounded in planning. And I also think it's pointless to suggest to the public that there is a basis to fight an application without sufficient planning grounds. So very respectfully, I'd ask that you approve the application before you. I described this to one of my partners at the office today as being a textbook application. It's a very clean application. It's supported at every level. It's got a lot of thought from your planning department in terms of implementing controls, and it represents a very appropriate development for these lands.
Thank you. Any questions of council for Ms. Premi? None? Okay. The public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded. I'm looking for council. Yes, Councillor Ioannoni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to talk about a couple of the issues the residents brought up. I actually just moved into that area, and I will tell you it takes probably 15 minutes to get from Charnwood onto Montrose, and then you have to do it and take your life in your hands and hope that you can get out fast enough to do it. I don't care which end of Charnwood you're on. So to say that will not impact traffic over there, I don't believe that for a minute. We talked earlier about drainage and how our sewers and our pipes aren't handling the loads in the 100-year storms now. We listened to, I'm sorry, I'm going to say Maria because I didn't write your last name down, I apologize, talk about the flooding issues in her area and the problems they have. And while Ms. Premi knows that infilling is a provincial mandate, I think we have public meetings so that we can have the people most affected come out and tell us whether they want this development in their neighborhood or they don't. They don't really understand it on a planning issue. I did have an opportunity to speak to a number of them and explain, look, the owner of that land is trying to get designation for highest and best use. And that's basically all this is before us. They aren't going to develop it, they're going to flip it to a developer. And the answer that the residents had was, wait a minute, we have lived there in single-family homes for X amount of years. Kelly spoke about that. And they said this is a real change in the game. It doesn't, I think it's too big. I walk my dogs down there all the time. I think the development is too big. I don't think it fits in that area. And I think the fact that the majority of residents who have emailed us, signed a petition or called us are all opposed to it, says they don't believe it fits in that area either. And I would move denial of the application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morocco.
I just want to support Councillor Iannoni's motion, so I will second that. I have to say, I don't want to beat up on developers, but I'm not a supporter of smart growth, and I shouldn't have to say that I do want to apologize for one meeting before that I did actually probably say greedy developer. I should not have ever said that because it's really the province that actually legislates smart growth. So I want to make sure that I'm not a supporter of smart growth. I don't care what government put it into place, but this is just far too much for this piece of property, and I can't support it.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Councillor Ioannoni, seconded by Councillor Morocco. Councillor Gates.
Anyways, yeah, I always enjoy the presentations put on by the developers. And I always try to pick up a word that is said, and this is not necessarily the developer, but the representative. And they talk about a textbook application. And to me, a textbook application is one that satisfies everybody. There's a win for the residents, there's a win for the city, and there's a win for the developer. And as you can see tonight, with the number of residents that are here today, there's not a win for the residents, so it's not textbook. So I'm not going to support it.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Are there any other comments or questions of Council? Okay, Councillor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, Your Worship, I guess I'd just like to say that I think at some point in time we're going to have to look at the provincial planning policies that were passed down, or as we've heard tonight, have been called the sort of smart growth plan. I think I've said it before, I know it was said again tonight, that most often infilling applications are some of the most contentious applications that we deal with. And it's hard for neighbors when they've lived in an area for so long to want or even accept any change to what's there right now. And I think this is probably the third application that has come through City Hall that I can remember in the last month where we've had a positive planning report, but we've had a lot of neighbors come out that were objecting to it. And the first one went to Committee of Adjustment, and I know some of the councillors were dealing with it, perhaps not all of them. The last one we dealt with was on Dorchester Road, and now we're dealing with this one. And I think at some point, Your Worship, we have to look at the policies, because the developers are coming down to City Hall and they're saying, hang on a second, guys, we're conforming to the policies that are in place that you have. And I guess most residents don't know that those are part of the provincial smart growth policy plans that were pushed down on the city. So we had no choice but to accept them. So the developers are coming to us and saying, hang on a second, guys, we're only conforming to the policies that you're laying out here. And the residents are coming out and they're saying, absolutely not. This is overdevelopment and I really don't want it around here. And at some point, Your Worship, I think we're going to have to sort of weigh the scales, because right now we're at opposite ends of the spectrum.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Pietrangelo. Any other? Yes, Councillor Wing.
Yes, I'll vote with the rest of council on this, but I think Ms. Premier was right. I don't want to burst anybody's balloons, but it looks like this will be settled by the OMB in a few months, and probably the way the decision's going here tonight is going to get overturned. So the one thing I do want to take note of is Mrs. Halliday's points and her recommendations, and I guess that's probably something more for the site plan stage, but those I took note of, and I thought those are very important for our staff to remember when the time comes. I think those were extremely good points. But when I was first contacted by a resident regarding this application, I made the same points Ms. Premier did tonight. It comes down to planning evidence, and this is a real stretch to find planning grounds to not support. But despite this, and these are indeed the toughest applications that come to us, I do support smart growth, because we have to stop sprawling out to the countryside. As a municipality, we can't afford to keep extending our water lines and our sewers and our roads and our transportation system. It's about making better, more efficient use of the infrastructure we have in place. And I just think there's got to be more sensitive ways to do it than some of the applications we've seen.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments of council? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the vote then. All those in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. So it's turned down tonight. Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Just so we don't lose sight of the complaint regarding the drainage, could we officially refer the complaint that was brought to our attention to the hydro formally, and get a report back from council on the weed cutting and the drainage issue?
And the debris. Okay, moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Morocco. All those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous as well. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Oh my gosh, they're all going to miss the best part of the meeting. Yeah, I can't believe that. That's okay. Yeah. Here we are. Okay, council comments here. Reminder to the public that City Council meetings begin at 5 p.m. on Tuesdays. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, October the 8th, starting at 5 p.m. Special announcement tonight for all of our viewers at home that are not aware. Special birthday today. We've got Councillor Wayne Thompson and Councillor Wayne Gates. So the two Waynes are celebrating their 39th birthdays tonight. So congratulations, gentlemen.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Also, in advance, slightly, we'd like to wish Councillor Bart Maves a birthday. His birthday is going to be this coming Saturday. So, Bart, happy birthday to you as well.
3 wins.
Recognition?
All Libras.
All Libras, yeah. Special recognition to some of our employees. If we get someone to shut that door back there, that'd be great. Thank you for that, Mr. Illovich. Special congratulations to some of our employees, specifically Wayne Allen and Ron Waters on their long service medals for 25 years in municipal law enforcement. Congratulations, gentlemen. Obituaries. Martha Meck, mother of Ken Meck, passed away from our planning department, and Ken Meck of our planning department, and Lawrence Joseph Kitney, the uncle of Karen Kitney of our CAO's office. So our regrets go out to their families. In the past couple of weeks, we had the Fatima Path to Peace conference in town with people from all over the world. The Grand Fondo bicycle tour, which myself and our CAO rode the first almost half of the ride, and it was a great experience. And I have to tell you, if I can just kind of paint the picture for you. Well, first of all, they gave me a bicycle because I don't have a street bike, I have a mountain bike. So I rode along with our CAO, who's got a, well, he's got a hybrid bike. So it's not quite a street bike, but it's kind of an in-between bike. And of course, we were dressed very appropriately. Him in his big bomber puffy jacket, he looked kind of like a parachute, riding, cutting the wind, like, you know, pushing a mattress through the water. And then, of course, myself, you know, used to a nice cushiony seat, didn't realize the bicycle I'd be riding would be hard as a board. So, of course, I had gym shorts. And all I'll tell you is at the end of the race, the CAO would not massage my sore parts. He refused. So he wasn't a team player. But it was a great experience. And it was kind of funny. After the first ride, the VIP ride, we brought out our bicycles, and we were talking about the bicycle. They gave me what's known as a Cervelo road bike, street bike. And I asked, what's this bike worth, this bike? And they said, well, it's, you know, 4 or 5. And CAO said, oh, mine too. And they said, no, 1,000. So we quickly identified that his bike was a little bit, but considering his advanced age and well, he's a member of coordination, and no, but we were very impressed. He rode like a machine. He was in excellent shape, this guy.
He got the bike through his fire insurance.
Through his, yes, he did. But he did a very good job, especially considering he rode 100K the weekend before. So we did the ride, and if you could imagine starting the race out in front of the falls, Jim Cuddy was in the race from Blue Rodeo, Barney Bental, and the sun was just coming up over the falls. It was quiet, the roads were closed down as we worked our way past the B&Bs, past Whirlpool Golf Course with the sprinklers going, the wineries, the sun was coming up over the Niagara River. It was spectacular.
I feel like I did it myself.
You feel like you did it yourself, that's right. And then at this point we realized we were holding hands and we let go quickly. But no, truth be told, the racers that we met in the race, and we met a lot, and the reason we met so many is because they're all passing us, so we had a chance to meet quite a few. But they were just absolutely thrilled with the venue. They said, what a gorgeous venue. We met people from everywhere. And they were just going on and on with how spectacular, how lucky we were. And yes, there were some inconveniences with some roadways and driveways being closed, but the greater good was amazing of the sharing the road and the benefit. The people just loved it. And this socioeconomic class of people come here to spend money. These are people that don't hesitate to spend 10, 15, 20,000 for a bicycle, stayed here for several days with their families, traveled from out west, from out east, from the U.S., from abroad. And there were only 1,000 riders this year, but they had to get the route down tight. Next year, what's that? Well, no, there was 900 registered. Guys like us weren't registered. There was people like us not registered. So they wouldn't let us register. We were a little bit of an embarrassment to the race. Well, I'll tell you, they only got the route down 2 weeks before the race. So it was disappointing. They had so many challenges, but this race was top notch, and it's going to be very successful. I predict The Niagara Falls leg of this race will be the biggest of the Grand Fondo. I don't think it'll take too long to get up to 10,000 cyclists. It was very popular, well run. They built a solid foundation. It's going to grow from there. Is it true that he beat me? Well, to the food area, yes, he definitely got there quicker. No, but it was a great ride, and you'd be proud of your CAO. The guy's actually in very good shape, and he did very, very well. So just want to say it was a great time, the Grand Fondo. Moving on, Rotary Lobster Fest was accompanied by, I talk quickly so he doesn't have a chance to jump in. Did you want to comment on the race at all, Mr. CAO? No? Rotary Lobster Fest held at Club Italia last week. Councillor Iannone, Morocco, and Gates joined me there as we had our feast of fresh East Coast lobster. We had the Parade of the Unknown Soldier last Sunday at Fairview Cemetery. And right after it was the Terry Fox Run. Councillors Peter Angelo, Iannone, and Gates joined us at the Terry Fox Run, along with our CAO and his dog and our family, so it was very nice. We had the first ever Mayor's Healthy Lunch event at Oaks Park. I was joined by Councillors Gates, Maves, and Morocco, and senior staff. And I have to say, great big thank you to Camiso's Fresh Foods, to Trillium College for providing free massages to everybody that came to the event. Thank you to all those that attended. It was a great day. It was a sunny day. It was a lot of fun, and it was a healthy way to celebrate the opening of the United Way for Niagara Falls and Fort Erie. We had the opening at the old Niagara Falls Memorial Arena of the History of Sands, which are incredible sand sculptures. These are 15, 25 feet tall, incredible War of 1812 sculptures. If you haven't had a chance to go see it. These are beyond, they're lifelike, they're massive, and just absolutely incredible. Take the time to go see them. Also, Sullivan Manny, or Mahoney, or however you like to say it, celebrated their 60th anniversary last week. Also, this past Thursday was an interesting day. The same day, within a half hour, myself, the chair of the Niagara Parks Commission, welcomed the president of Latvia, and half an hour later, the princess of Thailand. So it was an interesting morning here in Niagara Falls. As well, we just celebrated a couple of days ago the 50th anniversary of the building of the Queenston-Lewiston Bridge, or as it's known on the other side, the Lewiston-Queenston Bridge. 60 years that it's been there, and of course it was all begun from former Mayor Thompson's flying of his kite over to begin the building of the bridge on a sunny morning. The SCV, Stanford Center Volunteer Firefighters, and Scouts attempted to have their first soapbox derby, which I understand years ago Mike Carrio used to win on Drummond Road. As it turns out, the rain would not stop, so they were not able to have their event, but they were all excited. We had cars from all over, and talk about expensive as well. They were telling me that some of the tires on these machines, they'll spend $20,000 just for the wheels. So some of them take their soapbox vehicles very, very seriously. We had the opening of Baggio McKinnon Pharmacy on the corner of Dunn and Drummond. That's the fourth of the family, and that'll be managed by their son Aaron. He was also a pharmacist. We had the ribbon cutting of the Empire Communities Development take place yesterday. Councillor Thompson joined me down there for that, where they'll be building 900 homes and 600 townhomes in the south end of the city. And already they're selling out, they're flying off the shelves. People are buying them like crazy. They can't get over the speed at which people are buying them. So, testament to the popularity of locating here in Niagara Falls. And last up, coming up, a Summer Trillium Recognition of Excellent Awards takes place at the Ramada Plaza Hotel on Thursday, September the 26th. And the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast takes place this year on Wednesday, October the 30th at 7 a.m. 6:15 is the breakfast. Yeah, you wish it was noon. 6:15 is the breakfast. 7 o'clock is the talk. Tickets are $12.50. And this year, our guest speaker is going to be none other than Nick Wallenda. So he's going to join us this year. It was a challenge trying to make his schedule work because he's so busy. He's going to be here this year for the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. Again, Wednesday, October the 30th. Get your tickets early. It's going to sell out. Last year we had over 500. I anticipate it'll be very popular this year with Nick Wallenda as well. So thank you for your attention to that part of the meeting. Moving along to communications and comments of the city clerk. We have 8 different items, and we can do them one at a time if council likes. First up, yes, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I would move all of them 8 and just have a comment regarding the number 7, the Niagara Falls Community Policing Committee. I read the report. Is any further information on that? We're just referring it to staff, so I imagine there'll be a report back. That's all. Don't move the balance.
Okay. And just really quickly, we're looking at number 1, Autism Awareness Month for October. Fire Prevention Week be October the 12th. Fire Prevention Week, rather, be the 6th to the 12th. Ontario Multi-Faith Council, Spiritual and Religious Care Awareness Week, October 14th to the 20th. CUPE Ontario asking that Child Care Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day be October the 30th, same day as the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. Middlesex Centre requesting resolution opposing the requirement of the municipal building official under the Ontario Municipal Building Code. Mayor's Accessibility Advisory Committee changing their name and logo. Niagara Falls Community Policing Committee, we've got a report coming. The Niagara Falls International Marathon requesting in-kind bus services as in the past. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay. Opposed? Okay, that's passed unanimously. And I'd also ask the Chief, would you please quickly give us an overview of item 2 for Fire Prevention Week?
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the leading causes of home fires in Ontario and also within our own community is kitchen fires. So it should be no surprise that this year we're going to be focusing on preventing kitchen fires in our homes. So our kickoff event is on Saturday, October the 5th, between 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We brought it home this year back to the fire station at Station 1 on Morrison Street. It used to be at Home Depot, if you remember previous years, but we're continuing to partner with Home Depot and Enbridge on bringing them back to the fire station with us for a lot of activities that day, including some demonstrations and some activities for children, and also some education on preventing those kitchen fires. So we're inviting the whole community to come out on that day and enjoy some of the fun with us. So we also are participating with some events throughout the rest of the week, including school drills, as we do in all our schools during that week, so we can make sure they're prepared and know what to do in case there's a fire in their school. So we look forward to also having the public see the Niagara Falls Review and Niagara This Week, where we'll have inserts regarding Fire Prevention Week in those papers.
Thank you very much for that, Chief. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional items for Council's consideration? Okay, one item that we do have, Councillor, that you're handed out tonight is a request to rename the section of Kaler Road, the piece that goes south from Brown Road to Heartland Forest Parkway. We just asked that maybe we could refer this to staff to follow up on this. Okay, we got moved by Councillor Morocco, second by Councillor Thompson. If there's no discussion to that, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's passed unanimously. Now we're looking for ratification of in-camera matters. Mr. Clerk.
Your Worship, a couple of items for Council's consideration. Item number 1, that the city enter into an agreement with Tyler and Kelly Picard with respect to a sanitary sewer located on a portion of their land located at 6549 Corwin, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said agreement. Item number 2 is that staff be authorized to undertake the acquisition and construction of a driveway from Stanley Avenue to 4th Avenue servicing the Gale Center. That the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute all associated documents as per that recommendation, and that staff be authorized to take whatever steps are required to implement the recommendation, including and not limited to the acquisition of land for a price of $125,000, a Phase 2 environmental investigation, and an environmental assessment of the project.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Maves. There's no discussion. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that passes unanimously. Now we're to the bylaws section. Mr. Clerk, any additional bylaws or amendments for tonight?
The developers related to bylaw 2013-143 have requested that bylaw be pulled at this point in time, so we're going to rejig the order of the bylaws. We'll probably slot the general purposes bylaw in that number, so our numbers will be one less than indicated on the agenda.
Motion to introduce the bylaw and be given a first reading.
Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Maves, that the bylaws be given a first reading. All those in favor?
So bylaws 2013-143 to 2013-149 be read a first time.
Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo for a second and third reading, seconded by Councillor Carrio. All those in favor?
Bylaws 2013-143 to 2013-149 read a second and third time and passed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any new business? Councillor Pietrangelo.
Your Worship, I just wanted to ask about St. Paul Avenue north of Mountain Road, and I know that Councillor Thompson has brought it up many times. This is a regional road, Your Worship? I guess through you to Mr. Holman? Yes? Okay. And that's what I thought. They've recently done some patching on it. You can tell that the road is probably going to be in need of reconstruction in the near future. I guess what I'm wondering is there any plans right now at the region to reconstruct that road? I know Councillor Thompson has brought it up on a number of occasions, insisting that there needs to be a left turn lane as you're heading north, so going down the hill into the neighborhoods of St. David's. The other thing, Your Worship, is I see a lot of people on the road, not only cars, but bikes and runners as well, simply because that's one of the main arteries now to get down to St. David's. And I think the landscape in terms of the traffic has changed over the last 10 years with all the development that has gone on down in St. David's. A lot of the people that have bought homes have connections to Niagara Falls, and there seems to be a lot more traffic on that road going back up and down. So I don't know if the region has any plans, or whether it's in a 5-year plan. I wanted to just find that out, Your Worship, and if they are looking at reconstructing it, I would hope that we would be able to give some comments to it, Your Worship. Those.
Mr. Holman, did you get that? Do you want us to put it into a form? We can put some formal follow-up.
Let me just find out whether or not they're looking at it.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
You must have been reading my mind.
It's easy to make a birthday boy's mind.
I've brought it up many times because of the danger of the cars going down and two lanes of traffic coming up, speeding in most cases, very dangerous situation. So are you referring that to have a report back on the condition of the road when they're going to reconstruct it? And if they do a lane, things have changed since the last time I brought it up. And I just found out in the last week or so that Joe Cousins lives in the neighborhood of St. David's. So, would you please send it back to the region and see if there's any change of heart? Because that's great.
Yeah. Your Worship, I don't know if we need a full report at this point. I guess my question only is whether or not the region is looking at it and in a 5-year plan. If they're not looking at it, then I think we can make a formal request that they actually take it into consideration for having it reconstructed over the next 5 years, and then hopefully the council can be part of the process, seeing as it is one of the gateways in and out of our city.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good information. Is this a recent move, Councillor? Yeah. That's good. That's good. Okay, so that's just direction to step.
No.
Oh, no.
I didn't know. You have something later?
Did you guys want to have your own meeting over there? Councillor Thompson, we're going by seniority. That's a fair way to go. Councillor Thompson.
This is something that's been on my mind for a long time. And you know that we periodically refer to staff the name of individuals who are prominent in the community, or for some particular reason we want to identify them as being somebody special in the community. And I have been thinking about this for a long time, and I was trying to pick the right time to bring it forward. And for many reasons, the word philanthropy has been mentioned several times tonight. And I also noticed in the article where John McBain is given $120 million to the Rhodes Scholarship. Now, I know a lot of people who have been identified as being special people in business, special people in community work, special people in all kinds of different categories, even politically. However, John McBain, in my opinion, is somebody who is extremely successful in business. If you read the article where he sold part of his business for $2 billion, I don't know of anybody else that originated from this community who has had that kind of business success. I had the pleasure of being associated with him over the years with his father in politics and standing beside him, handing out pamphlets periodically during election time, and just got to know him as an extremely down-to-earth, fine, first-class young man. Now he's been so successful in business, but I wrote him a letter when I was in office to see if he would be interested in contributing to the McBain Center. And this came as a result of a conversation at his father's funeral, where he said if something comes up, a street or something that I can become involved with perpetuating my father's name, I'd appreciate it. So we wrote the letter, and sure enough, he contributed $1 million to our community center. I was approached again by FACS, Family and Children's Services, and I was reluctant to do it, but I wrote him a letter again, and I remember him calling me from Switzerland on a Saturday morning and saying, "Wayne, it's John McBain. Got your letter. My father was the former president of the Children's Aid Society. It fits in with what I'd like to do, and is $750,000 okay?" And I said, "Yep, I think that'll do it." And here we see him again giving to extremely worthwhile causes. The name of the McBain Center is after Al and Vi, his mother and father, and he was reluctant to have his name put on the fax, so it went to his, they're both adopted sister Shelley McBain on the fax. And I think it's appropriate that we refer John McBain's name to our staff to come back, and this is not anything rushed or in a hurry. I would like to make sure it's done properly, and that we work towards suitably recognizing this young man who is, in my opinion, the epitome of success, business, and philanthropy. He spends all of his time now with his foundation giving to mainly needy children in Africa, but he spends his whole life on giving back, and he certainly hasn't neglected his roots in Niagara Falls, and so I would like to refer that to staff. Hopefully that we can do something appropriate, and maybe invite him back here at an appropriate time for a John McBain Day in the city of Niagara Falls.
It's a great idea. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Morocco. No, it's not the same thing. Front page of the Globe and Mail, you know, I'm just reading Niagara, or Canadian guy gives 120 million, and I'm flipping, I thought, oh my God, John McBain, Niagara Falls. Something to be awfully proud of. So that's great. It's great to recognize he's done an awful lot for our community, so I hear you. Any other discussion to that motion?
Can we get Councillor Thompson to write them another letter?
I don't know, they're going down each one.
As a matter of fact, I'd like to state now that I do not write any more letters to and I'm approached regularly, and I think I've been to the trough twice and extremely successful, and I think that's enough.
Quit while you're ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we'll call the vote then. All those in favor? Okay, that was easily passed. Any other?
Anybody else on new business? No?
Go right ahead, Councillor.
Well, I wasn't sure if one of the other councillors would raise this, but I'm gonna raise it. We got some surprising news today at 1 o'clock that our MPP Kim Crater has chosen to retire, and I think hopefully I can speak for everybody around the room. Kim has been a good friend of mine, not only through politics, but also in the labor movement when he was the Labor Council. But I think Kim has shown how much he's loved our community with his heart and his passion. I think anybody that had a birthday, whether it be 90 years old, 100 years old, seniors' homes, right across, anything that any of us ever wanted to get from Kim, he gave every ounce of energy, even during his sicknesses. And he's had some sicknesses, some serious sickness. So I just would like to, on behalf of myself and the rest of the councillors, say thanks to Kim for a job well done, and would like to put a motion for it that we send him a letter on congratulating on his years of service as an MPP, and thank him for his contribution as an MPP for the residents of Niagara Falls.
That's great.
And as alderman.
And as an alderman, that's
Well,
right.
he may be back.
Yeah. Okay, moved by Councillor Gates and seconded by Councillor Wing. What's that? That we send a thank you letter of appreciation to MPP, former MPP Kim Crater, for his years of service to the community and to the riding. So we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's easily, unanimously passed as well. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. One other thing too, Councillor, absolutely, in regard to former MPP, and I guess we'll be saying from now our Crater, the guy certainly, his heart and soul has been in this community. You know, say what you will, the guy definitely cared. And it didn't matter. You know, one of my favorite stories that he used to like to tell is he'd be in his motorcycle at this little lady's house in Niagara on the Lake. And he went to talk to her, and she wouldn't answer the door. She didn't answer the door. So he went out and he phoned her, and she answered the phone. And he said, "Oh, hi, it's Kim Crater," you know. And she says, "Oh, good. I hope you're going to get here soon. We've got some Hell's Angels at my door." So we've had a lot of laughs on a regular. You know, we would give each other the gears at every event that we'd be at, and people would come to like that, and they knew it was just friendly jabbing. But definitely we'll miss him, and certainly look forward to hearing more and giving him some more accolades, you know, for all the work and service he's given over the last 20 or so years to the community. And as well, I did want to mention too, another pillar of the community passed away, Mary Alfieri from the Capri. Passed away, and that was sad. You know, it was the end of an era for a lot of people, and we certainly send our condolences to the Alfieri